Chairman, are we going to 348, the next case? I can bring them in.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. Yeah, 34820Z.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to this October 16th, 2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I move that we reconvene this meeting. Commissioner Toya seconds, Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito,
Yes.
Commissioner Toya. Give him a second. He's had some issues logging in from the app.
There we go.
Sam, you
There
there?
we go. I don't know. Yeah, it wasn't as long as last time, but I'm in.
Okay, it's a tomorrow problem. We'll fix it tomorrow. Okay, let me move again. I move that we reconvene this meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Commissioner Toya seconds, Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito,
Yes.
Commissioner Toya,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are reconvened. We're moving now to matter 34820Z, which is 1206 West Wellington Avenue.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I think 349 is also there. Is that right?
Yes, sorry. It's 348 and 34920Z.
So my name is Tom Moore, and first I'd like to congratulate you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Sanchez. I don't know if you know this, but I was on the board for 7 years, and I practiced in front of it for 25 years, and I, in a very special way, appreciate your service. Today we have Jody and John Harris, who are on the same computer together here today, and their architect, Mike Ryan. Could we swear them so that we can just proceed?
Yeah, Counselor, let's put them on record, let's swear them in, and then I'm gonna let the Alderman's office speak because there's a conflict and the Alderman's representative has to get out of here.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and put your applicant and witnesses on the record and I'll swear them in.
So John and Jody Harris are the owners of this single family home, and they're here at 1206 West Wellington.
Okay, great. John and Jody, could you please each individually state your names and addresses, and then I'll individually swear you in?
Sure. Jody Harris. I live at 1206 West Wellington Avenue, Chicago.
Great. And Jody, let's swear you in first. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
Yes.
Okay,
No.
great. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I'm John Harris. I also live at 1206 West Wellington Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, 60657.
Great. Thank you, John. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do, yes.
Great.
And then we also have their architect, Mr. Mike Ryan.
Hey, Mike, could you state your name and address for the record? Oh, Mike, you might be on mute. Let's see.
Yes, my name is Mike Ryan. I reside at 4535 North Kenneth Avenue in Chicago, and I've been a licensed architect in Chicago for about 20 years.
Great. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Perfect. You're sworn in. So, Counselor, if it's okay with you, we're going to go to Paul at the Alderman's office.
Yes, of course.
I believe he's here. I want to stay in opposition, but we'll swear Paul in and hear him out, and then we'll go back to you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Sajevec. I'm Chief of Staff to Alderman Wagaspak, 32nd Ward. I appreciate you putting me ahead a little bit here in the order. I hope to be able to listen in. I have to pick up one of our kids from a practice, so I apologize for that.
No worries. Paul, can you just state your address? I want to swear you in.
Yeah, my address is, our office address is 2657 North Clybourne. It's the office of the 32nd Ward. And again, I'm Chief of Staff to Alderman Scott Wagaspak.
Great. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to ask, before Paul speaks, anyone who's not speaking right now, if you could mute your mic, because we're getting some background. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Great, thank you, Chairman. So our strong opposition to the requested variation stems primarily from two concerns. First, a review of the lot in question combined with the purpose of the variations clearly indicates that they do not meet the standard of creating practical difficulties or particular hardships for the subject property. Second, after considerable discussion with the neighborhood community organizations in the 32nd Ward, it is our land use planning policy to, in most cases, object to requests for setback reductions to accommodate physical connectors between the primary structure and the garage. The negative implications of physical connectors between the primary structure and the garage include reduced open space, reduced access to light and air on neighboring properties, degradation of the context and character of the built environment, increased energy use and emissions associated with heating and cooling the enclosed walkway. In our review of the subject site, there are no characteristics that indicate that it, that it presents a practical difficulty or hardship. And the review of the lot indicates that it fails to satisfy each of the three criteria described in section 1713-1107B of the Chicago Zoning Code. Failure to meet any of these three criteria, as you know, is grounds for denial. So criteria one, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only in accordance with the standards of the zoning ordinance. The owner decided to purchase the property without the requested financial connector, suggesting that that was not a necessity. Second, the practical difficulties or particular hardships are due to unique circumstances and are not generally applicable to other similarly situated property. At 4,650 square feet, the lot in question is 49% larger than a standard 125 by 25 city lot. The ability to work with such a large lot eliminates any suggestion that there are practical difficulties or particular hardships due to unique circumstances that are not generally applicable to other similarly situated properties. This lot presents no challenge that would suggest that a typical single-family home with a detached garage would constitute a hardship. To find the circumstances associated with this oversized lot constitutes practical difficulties or particular hardships would in effect constitute a ruling that virtually all lots in the city present such difficulties and hardships. Third criteria, if the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. In our view, granting these variations to allow physical connection between the primary structure and the garage over the objection of the alderman and the neighborhood community groups of the 32nd Ward would indeed alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The character of these connectors present is the antithesis of the classic residential design of a rear yard separating the primary structure and garage that still dominates the development pattern of new construction in this type of low density residential neighborhood in the 32nd Ward. Moving from a development pattern that promotes rear yard open spaces as much needed respites from the hard edges of urban living to one that promotes masonry stretching from the front setback to the alley presenting neighbors with foreboding walls rather than open space and access to light and air they are currently accustomed to would indeed alter the essential character of the neighborhood for the worse. This effect is evidenced by the aggressive opposition of the ward's neighborhood community groups their opposition that they've expressed towards these intrusions into the required rear yard open space. An additional point on altering the character of the neighborhood as it relates to this specific proposal is that I walked the site and took photos, as we always do in such cases. And one of the things that strikes you is that the multi-unit residential building to the east at 1200 West Wellington was designed with a notch in the building along the west side to provide a 17-foot wide courtyard space. This courtyard has a table, chairs, and provides an inviting outdoor space for the tenants in the building, with the units being on the smaller side, ranging around 500 to 700 square feet primarily. Having such an outdoor space provides a significant benefit. However, if the proposed plan next door were to be approved, the extension of the home would fill in the entire space between the home and garage and would in effect wall in this courtyard space and make it far less inviting, essentially converting it from a more open courtyard to something that feels much more like a closed walkway. So in summary, I believe that the preceding arguments present a compelling case that these variances should be denied. Further, I hope that you and your fellow board members will respect the important role that aldermen play in establishing local land use policy. Given the combination of the inability of these proposed variances to meet the prescribed criteria in the code and the policy that the alderman has adopted to impose intrusions into rear yard open spaces for the sake of these connectors, I hope that you will deny them. Thank you for your careful consideration of the alderman's position regarding these variances and the work of you and your fellow board members.
Great, thanks, Paul. And just for a simple clarification, I understand that your ward is opposed to connectors by principle. In this instance, are you opposed to the roof deck?
No. So we generally have no oppositions to roof decks. There are certain things that we look for and advocate for to try to safeguard the privacy and functionality of neighboring, rear yard open spaces and so forth. But we have no problem with or philosophical objections to roof decks or garage decks. The thing that we have come down very hard on, based on significant discussions with our neighborhood community organizations, is the physical connector, something that's heated and cooled 365 days of the year to basically, eliminate a short 10, 15-second walk between the primary structure and the garage. That the trade-offs there simply aren't worth it from the standpoint of the community. And we know from experience that one of the arguments that will be made is that, well, there are others that have been approved, and some of the neighboring wards to ours have entered into a situation where that is becoming more of the trend, whereas Alderman Wagaspak has been fairly successful in opposing these when they have come either before the board or as some sort of other type of zoning relief, and it's certainly his plan to continue to do so.
Okay. To the board, do any members of the board have a question for Paul before he gets out of here?
No.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, and I'll do my best to jump on or try to listen in by phone to the greatest extent that I can. And again, I appreciate the accommodation.
Yep, of course. Okay, Counselor. I believe, your witnesses are all sworn in, so you can take it away.
Thank you. So, Jody, you're going to speak for you and your husband, are you? I think she's muted.
I'm
No,
sorry. I'm sorry. We're now unmuted. What I'd like to do is have John start, and then I'm going to further explain our sort of unique situation from a medical standpoint as to why we're respectfully requesting the connection between our garage and our home.
Okay, so I have a series of questions that I'd like to ask.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Whichever of you is best to answer it could answer it, since you're both in an equal position.
Okay.
So, since you bought this home, you have not changed anything in the back. It's exactly as you bought it. Is that right?
Correct.
And so all of the conditions that are there now are existing. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And your architect, Mike Ryan, will testify to why these existing conditions create some practical difficulties in a little while. But one of those conditions is that the first floor, where it comes out into the existing back deck, the first floor is 8 inches higher. It's 48 inches off the ground. That is, it's 8 inches higher than the code allows. You've been educated to find that out. Is that right?
Yes.
So that if you weren't allowed, you want to extend that deck, but if you had to have that deck down 8 inches lower, you'd come out the back door and you'd have an immediate drop of 8 inches, which would be dangerous in terms of people falling when they come out the back door, if there's an immediate drop there. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And currently, and also the existing stairs to the higher, you have a circular staircase to the other floors, a fire exit, and it matches right at that 8 inches higher than code as well. Is that right? So you'd have to completely redo that circular stair if you were not allowed to keep your deck at 8 inches above code. Is that right?
Yes.
And the other condition that you inherited, right now your backyard is just full of stairs. It has a stairs into the basement, a stairs down to the ground from the deck, a stairs up to the garage roof deck, and the circular stairs. It has 4 different sets of stairs. Is that right?
Yes.
And so what you want to do is consolidate and really kind of an answer to what Paul said. You're going to create a lot more open space because you're going to put one set of stairs over the other, all on one side of your backyard there. Is that right?
Yes. In addition to that, we're going to create more open space by having it moved further east.
Right. And so as a part of this consolidation, you also are asking to enclose the area under the stairs up to the deck so that you can go directly from the garage into your basement. Is that right?
Correct.
And right now, those stairs into the basement intrude, and we have a picture in our exhibits, intrude into the back space, and they're an existing cement structure. Is that right?
Yes, there's 8 stairs down into the basement.
Right. So the idea is to use that existing structure and have a connection to the yard, to the garage from that structure, so you can go straight from the door of the garage, which is lined up, and right into the basement. Is that right?
Correct.
And the reason, the architect will talk about some practical difficulties, but the reason personally that you're asking to be able to do this internally is because both your husband and your daughter have a severe back problem condition that were they to slip and fall on the ice between, it could be severely disabling. Is that right?
Yes, and I don't know if you'd like me to explain at this point.
Well, I will, but just to ask you well, okay, you want to tell us about your husband and your daughter and why, first of all, what happened to your husband that kind of scared you as to what could happen to your daughter?
So just so to bring you up to speed for the committee, what existed with the health of my husband and my daughter did not exist when we purchased the house. It has since happened. So yes, it was not a concern when we first purchased the house. So this was not an issue at that time. Just to address what the alderman's office had said, this is a condition that was occurred over the last number of years. And I think it's probably best for John to explain what happened to him, and I can then explain what has happened to our teenage daughter over the last year and a half, and really why this is of such concern to our family regarding the connection of the garage to our house. So maybe I'll let John start.
So just real quickly, the reason that we're respectfully asking to be able to connect the house to the garage is I think you can see fairly clearly in the exhibit that's up. We have 8, concrete or cement stairs that lead down into our, the main entry we use from the garage into the house. And there's also a short walkway there. And as happens everywhere in Chicago in the rain, but specifically the ice and the snow, that just gets horribly slippery. So we bought the house in 2008, and in 2012,
Yes.
we bought the house in 2009. It was built in 2008, and in 2012. In December, when I was walking in from work after a day at work, got home around 6:30, exited that white door that you see out of the garage, and walked down the stairs. And it was extremely icy. I slipped down the stairs. I actually hit my head and my wrist, knocked myself out. No one was home. I laid on those stairs for what I believe was a few minutes. Luckily, I woke up and pulled myself inside. Of course, took pictures of what I look like just to show everyone. But I was able to pull myself inside, and that was obviously a scary situation. Since that time, we discovered in 2015 that I had a cyst on my spine that had to be surgically removed. And after undergoing that surgery and the subsequent rehab that I needed from that, I was told, and I know that if I were to suffer another fall like that and fall on my back again, it could be quite detrimental. So that is something that occurred after we bought the house that has made it that, by enclosing that, it would eliminate the possibility of slipping and falling on treacherous snow and ice that we wouldn't have a chance to solve.
And then really, even more than that, we found out a year and a half ago that our teenage daughter has a chronic medical condition. She has degenerative disc disorder in her spine. So she actually had to undergo emergency surgery for a severely herniated disc in her spine, in her lumbar spine, and continues to have 2 bulging discs. While this is extremely common in people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, in a teenager, there's less than 1% of all teenagers in the world that has this condition. We have since been told by her neurosurgeon that to basically eliminate risk of her further herniating her disc, that we need to be exceptionally careful with the need to eliminate her risk of falling. Really, any compression of her spine could create further herniation. So she actually is getting her driver's license in May, and so she is now going to be driving, and this is really why the need was expedited for us. She's going to be driving, pulling into the garage, and having to go directly into the house, likely at times when no one is home. So we became very concerned about our teenager falling, especially, obviously she's kind of an eggshell person right now, and we're more concerned about her even than us, about her coming and driving and being able to get safely into our house, which is why we pursued this avenue of the connector from the garage to the house.
And I forgot to ask you, you also have a son, so you have 2 teenagers, is that right?
Well, he's 12, almost a teenager.
I'm sorry, excuse me. He'll be a teenager soon. So as not to just take your word from it, one of our exhibits that we gave to the board timely last Monday was a letter from your neurosurgeon. Is that right?
From for our daughter's neurosurgeon, yes.
And you approached both of your neighbors, the neighbor on either side, including the neighbor of the multi-family building to your east. And we have submitted as our exhibits letters from both neighbors, the people most affected by this, letters of support. Is that right?
Yes, we have letters of support from our immediate west neighbor and the owner of the apartment building to our east.
You walked around the neighborhood and made a list of houses that were that also had connectors in your immediate neighborhood, in terms of that it doesn't change the essential character of the neighborhood. There are many others who have done this. Is that right?
Yes, both within the ward, and we, just for the commissioner's knowledge, we actually live only 2 houses from the end of this ward. And there happens to be just 2 blocks from our house, an exact situation like ours, where there is a connector between the house and the garage, where they are the house furthest east on the block.
Well, just so we have them in the record, you made a list, and we didn't get that in time on Monday, but just so we have it in the record, there's a connector, a similar situation at 1246 West George, 1248 West George, 1108 West George, 1041 West Wellington, 1050 West Wellington, and a total of about a dozen that you have named within a block or 2 of your house. Is that right?
Correct. But just so you're aware, and the commissioners are aware, one of those situations, one of those houses that you referenced actually is the identical situation that we're seeking, through our request, where the house is adjacent to an apartment building, and they have the connector where the apartment building is immediately to the east, and they are the furthest single family home to the east on the block.
Okay. I think, and you, both of you, and I worked out a written affidavit whereby you addressed each of the criteria necessary for this board to grant your request, should they so decide. And if you were to continue to testify, you'd testify consistently with that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
I then would move to Mr. Mike Ryan. Mr. Ryan, you gotta. There he is. Mr. Ryan, you've been sworn, and you've told us that you are a licensed architect in Illinois. As a matter of fact, you've testified before this board on other occasions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the Harrises came to you with their problem and asked you to work on a solution, and we've submitted the plans whereby you're consolidating these stairs and extending this deck. Is that right?
That's correct.
And what practical difficulties did you encounter in order to, well, first of all, the existing building and the existing conditions there were all there. They're nothing that these applicants created. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And what practical difficulties did you have in getting around these existing conditions?
Well, in working in Chicago, space is precious, and even on a lot that's bigger than a standard lot, there's a lot of inefficiency with multiple stairways throughout this small rear yard space. So what we've done is consolidated the circulation by stacking one stair over the other to really increase and maximize the rear yard open space. By doing so, the existing stair that goes to the garage roof now is emulated but stacked over the stair to the basement. So as far as the massing, it's relatively very similar to the existing condition. We're not increasing or making worse that situation. We're just consolidating it so that the owners can have a much more usable open space in their rear yard that's more easily accessible from the inside of the house.
And in your professional opinion, this doesn't change.
One other minor point I wanted to make.
Yeah, please.
Pardon?
Please do.
Please do what?
Make the other point.
Oh, the other point was we are removing that large chimney, which is, you know, taller and blocking more space between the properties than necessary. And the last point is the existing spiral stair lands on the existing landing that's 4'8" above grade as opposed to 4 feet. And it helps us maximize the efficiency of the installation by utilizing that height that was already established with the existing conditions.
And in your professional opinion, does this in any way change the essential character of the neighborhood?
No.
And you and I have gone through each of the characteristics necessary for this board to grant this request. And if you were to continue to testify, would you testify consistently with your affidavit on file?
Yes.
I think that's the essence of our case, and we're available for questions.
All right, to the board, there's another objector. So I just want to know if we have any questions from the applicant before we get to the objector. I think we'll hear the objector's concerns, and then we'll come back and we'll all have questions afterwards. So it's Sam Samatas, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
All
Sam,
right.
so could you please state your name and address, and then I'll get you sworn in?
Yes, my name is Sam Samatas. I live at 1434 West Berry, and I'm here representing the neighborhood group, South Lakeview Neighbors.
Okay, great. And Sam, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead and proceed with your objection.
Okay. With the hour being late, I will try to be brief, and I will just reinforce what Paul said before, that it is the belief of South Lakeview Neighbors that the building connector does change the content and character of the neighborhood. The houses around this house are mainly RS3, RT35, and some RT4s, and they are mostly built, I should say almost all built, without a connector. In our neighborhood group, I think there's only a handful that were done through spot zoning, and I believe that's the reason for 1246 and 1248. Everything else that was mentioned are outside of our neighborhood group and mainly outside the ward too. Everything at the 1100 block, 1000 block is outside the ward. As much as I sympathize with the medical condition of the petitioners, I have the same problem of degenerative disc disease. The hardship relative to zoning is somewhat self-induced, and it's our wish that you don't allow this variance to proceed. Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Am I still on?
Yeah, you're still on, Mr. Samatas. So I'm going to ask the board if they have any questions of you. And then, if you have any questions of the applicant, you have the right to cross-examination. So first, let's do board members. Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Samatas?
Yeah, I do have one. This is Commissioner Toya. Your neighborhood group, doesn't that go into both wards? I mean, you don't stop at just the 32nd ward, so it
No.
does go into the other ward, right?
No,
I mean,
no, it's all contained in the 32nd ward. It goes from
Okay.
Racine to Ravenswood, Belmont to Diversey.
So it's all in the 32nd ward.
It's
Your
all in the
neighborhood group.
32nd ward.
And then the other ones they were mentioning was in a different ward, is what you
That's
said,
correct.
right?
That's correct.
Okay. So that would also be a different neighborhood group.
That's right. That would be Central Lakeview neighbors.
I got it. So maybe Central Lakeview neighbors don't have a problem with it, but your neighborhood group does have a problem with it.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm not aware of exactly what Central Lakeview neighbors
Yeah,
does.
right.
But
Yeah, exactly. You're not part of that neighborhood group. I get it. I thought maybe your neighborhood group crossed both boundaries, but obviously it doesn't. All right. Thank you.
I would just like to also add that 3 months ago at our last in-person meeting, this exact problem was presented to our neighborhood group, and it was extremely controversial and was totally rejected. And that was done 1 block west of this property.
May I ask
Okay.
Mr. Semantis a question?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, Attorney Moore, it's we miss you on in person at our meetings.
Well, thank you. May I ask him one question, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Counselor.
So, Mr. Semantis, 1715 West Wellington, would that be in your area?
Give me that address again, please.
1715 West Wellington.
1715 West Wellington is in our neighborhood group.
Okay, how about 17?
About 5 blocks west, yes.
Okay, and how about 1728 West George?
That too.
And how about 1741 West Wellington?
That too.
And how about 1747 West George?
1740 West George.
47. I'm sorry.
47.
1747.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. These.
That's all.
Yes.
That's all I'll ask. When my people testify again, they'll confirm that those are additional addresses that they have found to have connectors.
Well, that's about a half dozen out of about 3,000 addresses. So
I think when we get to that, timing will matter as well. Something that we prepare that we'll want to hear about. But meantime, board members, any other questions for Mr. Samatas? Okay, Mr. Samatas, you now have the opportunity, as you please, to ask questions of the applicant via cross-examination. You don't have to, but you have the option.
I'm fine right now. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, Counselor, we're going to bring it back to the applicant. And unless you disagree and want to say something first, I'd like to open it up to my board members to ask questions of the applicant.
Just one question, if I may.
Yep.
Jody or John, Jody, you're the one who did the list. You heard those addresses that I asked Mr. Semantis. Each of those does have a connector similar to the one you're requesting. Is that right?
Yes.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. All right, to the board, let's start with some questions.
I've got a question. On the issue of the medical conditions as being a reason for the variation, I don't see reference to that in the findings of fact, in the proposed findings of fact. Is there a reason for that?
I have to, no, well, No, I don't think so. I have to remember what we put, you know, we did that a month or two ago. No, we always know, I mean, basically those are the board, we give the board the physical, as the architect has talked to, the hook they could hang their hat on if they so decide. And then sometimes the more personal things, we would have the applicants testify to in person. But no, it wasn't any calculated thing. It just is the way it happened.
Are you contending that these personal medical issues would be a valid basis to allow the variation?
Well, it's been my experience over 30 some odd years now of being on the board and being in front of the board. There are many shades of hardships, and the board has a responsibility to find a hook to hang their hat on, to have you know, some articulable physical hardship. In this case, it's existing conditions. You know, it's a floor that's 8 inches above the and it's there, and they didn't do it. But now they're trying to accommodate to it. But then the board has the discretion and has the ability to take into consideration the particular circumstances surrounding the particular request, and they always have. And traditionally, if it wasn't bothering anybody else, and if you know, if the neighbors on either side are against it, generally, for most of the time, the attitude of the board has been, you know, if they could, they'd grant it. So I don't think standing alone a subjective need would do it, but I think it's a combination, and the board has has always exercised its independence, and it's as Mr. Toyer would tell you, they don't have to do what the alderman says. They can do what the board thinks is in the best interest of the applicant and the community.
Yep. Thanks, Counselor. We're aware of that. On that note, though, if we do accept the medical condition as a hardship, we are obviously sympathetic to the medical conditions. We're just trying to figure out if we can frame it within our definition of hardship. Wouldn't you still agree that there are other ways that are legal within the zoning code that would achieve the same result of avoiding ice and other obstacles in the winter in that space? I don't believe that, for example, heated sidewalks are against the code. You know, just someone who comes and shovels and salts. It seems like there's ways around helping this ice effect in their home. Well, obviously there's, you know, ice throughout the city.
So are there other ways? I don't know that on a set of icy stairs that there's any good way except covering it and preventing the ice on it. But the fact that there might be another way doesn't eliminate the request for the best way, especially if it doesn't bother anybody else and it doesn't intrude on anybody else.
May I make one point also?
Of course.
So, I mean, just to the point that first the Alderman's office made and now the neighborhood group has made to 2 points. So first the Alderman's point of they don't like to grant or not grant, I mean, they're not granting, but they don't like to advocate or approve of any connection between a house and a garage because of the extra energy it expends. You know, a heated walkway, some of the other solutions that might prohibit ice and snow would also cause, obviously, increased energy In terms of salting and shoveling, we of course do that all the time. The situation of us falling was coming home, in between a snowstorm and not being able to address the salt and the snow before it had accumulated and made the stairs very treacherous. So this would obviously alleviate that. And just to the neighborhood's objection, the one that was a block west of us, I believe, was right at the end of the street and clearly affected the character and the appearance of the neighborhood, because that request was going to alter every view of looking down at the neighborhood from a westward view down Wellington. Our connection would actually, as you saw in one of those pictures, ours terminates at that building. We're the eastmost single-family house on the street, and our view completely ends at that building to our east, that multi-unit building. So us, in terms of altering the character of the neighborhood, that's kind of already been altered by that building, and we're actually beautifying it a little bit, as evidenced by our neighbor to the west being in favor of it, because she, is liking that we're changing the character of that. So just to speak to that a little bit.
Okay, and I guess I would ask you, you guys are obviously aware, you've gone through this process, that these connectors are very controversial in the city. Do you have a plan of what you would do if this is denied?
We haven't gotten there, to be completely honest.
Okay, totally fair. Other questions from the board?
This is Commissioner Toya. You said that your neighbors, did your neighbors write a letter in support?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, both our immediate west neighbor and the owner of the apartment building to our east, they both wrote a letter in support.
And those are exhibits posted as hearing exhibits that were posted Monday,
Okay.
along with the doctor's letter.
Okay, thank you.
I guess on that point, are those the neighbors that would be that would have their patio area, I guess their light and air obstructed if you were to build this?
Both of, yes, any change to our backyard area, the only entities that would be affected would really be our immediate east and immediate west, and they both are in support of the plan.
But is that when the alderman's office was talking, and they were saying that there was a nearby property that had a courtyard that the light and air would be blocked if this was built? Is it one of those adjacent properties that actually wrote a letter in support, or is that a different
Correct.
property?
No. That's absolutely correct.
And
That property owner wrote the letter in support.
And in terms of it blocking the light in any way, it's slightly above the fence that's there right now. And that courtyard's a new courtyard that was just put in. It's cemented over. There was a big tree in that up until about 8 months ago when the tree roots were growing into the building. So they just removed that tree, and that patio was recently put there, but it's not going to block that light like they were suggesting. It's it's still fully accessible to the light. If anything, our house, would block an area of that, but not this structure that's going to be put there.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that.
Well, not to belabor this, we appreciate your time and looking into this thoroughly, and we would respectfully request that you grant the application after you discuss it.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Just before we close, I just want to give the board members another opportunity to see if anyone else had anything on their minds to ask.
This is Commissioner Esposito. Could the architect please describe the finishes of the exterior of the connection?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. Would you mind describing the finish materials you specified for the exterior of the
Yes.
connector?
It's hardy board cement paneling that'll be paint finish, so it'll have a panelized look.
Okay, so it'll look like wood siding for all of us. Great, thank you.
Okay, that might be it. Anything else? All right, thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We'll
And
take.
thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, let's move to matter 35020S, which is at 2803 West Henderson Street. Mr. Scott, let us know when you are on.
Thank you. Hold on. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Great. Please just introduce yourself to the board.
Sure. My name is Andrew Scott with the Law Offices of Dykema Gossett. With me today, hopefully online still, are Matt Wilbur, the applicant and the developer. In addition, our project architect, Howard Hirsch with Hirsch MPG. And then finally, Peter Poulos with the Metron Group, and he is our appraiser. Is it the chair's pleasure to go ahead and swear everyone in, or should we proceed and then when they speak?
Yeah, let's swear everyone in.
Can we confirm we have everybody online?
Yeah, let's take a look. So
Peter Poulos here.
what we've got. We'll do Peter first then. Peter, will you state your name and address?
Peter Poulos, address is 5500 Pearl Street, Rosemont, Illinois.
Great. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
I do.
Thank you, Peter. I see Mr. Hirsch.
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch, will you state your name and address?
Yes, Howard Hirsch, Hirsch MPG Architects, located at 225 West Hubbard Street in Chicago, Illinois.
Great. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
I do.
Thank you. Do we have Matt Wilbur?
Yes.
Great. Yep, Matt, please state your name and address.
Yep, my name is Matt Wilbur, and I'm the property owner of 28803 West Henderson.
Great. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
I do.
Great. And I see that there is someone else with you. Can we swear them in as well?
My name is Lauren Jenner. I work for Making Construction at 3401 North California.
Great. Perfect. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
Yes.
Okay, good. Everyone's on. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, I don't believe we have any objectors here, so I'll try to get through this quickly. I don't want to short questions from the board, but just as a very brief matter of background, as you can see on your screen, the subject property that we're talking about is located at the southwest corner of North California and West Henderson Street. It is currently actually, the picture here shows a building, but the building has in fact been demolished, and the applicant is in the process of developing an 18-unit apartment building with 20 parking spaces located on the property as well. Sort of as he was developing his plans, it became very apparent that so the building that you see right there, that's no longer there. There's construction fencing up, and the building is just coming out of the ground. But in the planning process and during the permit process, it was very clear, particularly during the time of the pandemic, but also as a general matter in terms of the world of retail, that there wasn't a substantial demand for full retail spaces on the ground floor, as is typically called for in the C13 zoning classification. And there's a big surplus of retail in the area, and so what the applicant has done is they've tried to pivot here, and that's why they're seeking the special use, and they want to present and they want to undertake converting the proposed ground floor retail space to 2 live work units. You can see those on your screen today. And as I said, the real goal here is to try to activate the ground floor, but also ensuring that we don't have dark vacant space because of the surplus in the market. So what you're seeing right now is to the north, it is, I refer to it as Unit 1. And I'm sorry, I actually have that wrong. I've got it. I'm sorry. So the first unit, it's about a 450 square foot workspace with a 700 approximately square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment. And then the second unit, it's got about 400 square feet of, again, workspace, and it's a 1,200 square foot, 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment. Both of those are connected, and really the idea behind this is to make available to small businesses in the area, perhaps, businesses that don't need quite so much space and also want to have companion living space, to be able to live and work in the same areas. The surrounding area, just in terms of uses, there are some commercial and retail uses in the area, but by and large, to the west on Henderson, on the south side of the street is a park. To the north, it's all ground floor residential. To the south on North California, it's also ground floor residential. And so again, the idea of a live-work unit, it strikes, we think, a good balance between the residential in the area, but also, the desire to have, commercial space, retail space on the ground floor as well. And, really the spaces that have been developed by Mr. Hirsch and by Matt, they provide, good open spaces for retail. They're located, one is at the corner just at California and Henderson. The other one is at the far south end of the building. Again, it provides good visibility for these businesses, accessible entrances, everything that you would want in a retail space. And at the same time, it's, provides for a compatibility of uses between, the business component and also the residential component that are located within the ground floor. I don't know if we want to present any questions or have questions from the board yet, or I can do a quick question of my witnesses, and then we can move on. What's the chair's preference?
Yeah, if we get through your witnesses expeditiously, then we'll do board questions.
Okay. So first, calling Matt Wilbur. Matt, I'm sorry. I prepared an affidavit of testimony for you. Is that correct? Matt, are you on mute?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, okay, now I can hear you.
Yep.
So I prepared an affidavit of testimony for you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you reviewed that affidavit of testimony. Is that also correct?
Yes.
And then finally, if you were called upon to testify today, would you testify substantially in accordance with what's set forth in your affidavit?
I would.
Okay, thank you. Howard, same question. Prepared an affidavit on your behalf, affidavit of testimony on your behalf. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you reviewed that affidavit?
I did.
And if you were called upon to testify today, would you testify substantially in accordance with what's set forth in your affidavit of testimony?
I would.
Thank you. And then finally, Peter Poulos, same series of questions. I prepared an affidavit of testimony. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And you had an opportunity to review the affidavit and the testimony set forth therein?
That's correct.
And if called upon to testify today, would you testify substantially in accordance with what's set forth in that affidavit?
Yes, I would.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, we've got nothing further. We're available to answer any questions.
Okay, great question.
Well, I'm sorry, I'd just like to mention, because I know it's important to Commissioner Toya, we did have a community meeting on September 29th, pretty well attended. It was a Zoom call, and there was general agreement in the neighborhood that additional large retail spaces weren't really needed. And they there was general, well received the idea of having live work units at this location. So I just wanted to mention that we had reached out to the neighborhood and gotten, a positive response on what we're proposing to do.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Any questions from the board? I guess a quick question I have is have you identified who the occupants will be, or do you have kind of an idea of what type of business they will run?
Matt, you want to go ahead and answer?
Yeah, we really haven't. As Andrew mentioned, it's mostly residential in this area. Actually, there's quite a few single-family homes and 2 flats. So there really is no commercial sort of retail component in this little pocket. And across the street is the manufacturing district. So we're hoping that the live work might expand our opportunities here to find a tenant, possibly an artist or, a crafts person working out of one of these spaces. With the way things have changed with the pandemic, maybe it's some sort of sole practitioner who's an attorney or an accountant might be interested in one of these spaces. We're again just trying to expand our options here so the space doesn't remain vacant.
And Matt, you made a very good point when we were talking yesterday. Right across the street is one of the city's emergency veterinary clinics. And, I thought you had a good response that perhaps, a companion use over there is some kind of dog grooming, animal grooming facility, animal store, that type of thing. So that, again, is also another possibility.
Yep, that's true.
Okay, great. If no further questions from the board, we will take
This is the court reporter. Could I get the clarification on the other person in the conference room? Your name again, please?
Lauren Tanner.
Spell it, please.
LaurenTanner.
And you have an address?
3401 North California.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take this under consideration. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward to matter 35120S, 1601 West Ohio Street. Hey, Ms. Barnes, whenever you're ready.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we have all our witnesses, and I will try and keep this as short-winded as possible. I apologize. I'm Italian and a Scorpio and a girl, and so I have a lot working against me. But with that, I'll introduce my 2 witnesses so you can swear them in and then proceed expeditiously. So I'm happy to be here this afternoon or evening on behalf of the applicant, Keeper Property Holdings, LLC. Here with me on behalf of the applicant is the project manager, Valentine Darabin, as well as our certified land planner, Kareem Musawir.
Okay, great. Valentine, can we get your name and address and I'll swear you in?
You might be muted, Val.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Can we please get your name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in?
Sure. Valentine Duraban, 5408 North Kedzie, Chicago, Illinois, 60625.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Darabin. Do you swear to tell the truth? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
Yes, I do.
Great. And Mr. Musawir, we've already gotten you sworn in, and I acknowledge your expertise.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members of the board, once more for the record, my name is Sarah Barnes, and I'm an attorney at the law offices of Sam Banks, located at 221 North LaSalle Street. We're here today seeking a special use in order to permit the establishment of residential uses below the second floor of an existing 4-story mixed-use building that was built by the applicant over the last couple of years. The subject property is located in a B32 zoning district, and that is why we require this special use today. The existing building presently contains one vacant commercial unit at grade level and a total of 3 dwelling units above, as well as an attached garage at the rear of the first floor, which allows for secure interior parking for each of the units. Therefore, the commercial unit necessarily occupies the very front part of the first floor with its frontage on Ohio Street. Despite its best efforts, which were further frustrated by the more recent economic shutdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the applicant has been unable to successfully market or to otherwise find an interested tenant to occupy the grade level commercial space over the last almost full year. As such, and in consideration of ongoing communications with residents of the community as well as purchasers of the new dwelling units, the applicant is seeking to eliminate the grade level commercial space and to convert that area to accessory residential uses. Excuse me. Toward this end, the proposal calls for the establishment of a large communal amenity space, which will include an entertainment room and a lounge wherein residents will be able to safely congregate and engage with one another and or set up an at-home office during the day while we all continue to adapt to this new normal. In addition to the amenity space, and as an added convenience to the residents, the conversion also calls for the establishment of 3 private storage rooms off the attached garage and wholly within the first floor of the existing building as constructed. No new or additional dwelling units or expansion of the existing dwelling units are being proposed. Towards this same end, there will remain interior vehicular parking for each of the existing units within the rear of the first floor, as well as secure bike storage for 8 bicycles, without altering or expanding the footprint or the envelope of the existing building. All of the work being proposed will be interior and again, isolated to the front part of the first floor. As a matter of relevant history, the subject site was previously improved with an automobile sales and repair facility, which was raised back in 2016 to allow for the construction of the existing improvements. Towards this end, the applicant and our entire development team worked with the community for many, many months towards the redevelopment plan for this site. It was the community's desire throughout this process that the building be all residential, which is more in line with the other improvements on this block of Ohio Street. However, due to the underlying zoning at the site, a commercial use was first tried to be established as of right. Again, unfortunately, despite its best efforts, the applicant has been unable to occupy that commercial space, and therefore we are seeking the special use. As very briefly alluded to, and you will find in the findings of fact, as well as Mr. Weir's report, the entire surrounding neighborhood is almost predominantly all multi-unit residential and single family homes, in particular west of the subject site, or moving west of the subject site on Ohio Street, as well as directly to the south on Ashland, and on the west side of Ashland Street, the east side of Ashland Street, moving further east to Ohio. As such, we do believe that the proposed residential uses at this site will be compatible with the character of the existing improvements and the pattern of development in the neighborhood. And the local community organization, as well as the residents on that block, are excited to see the removal of the commercial use. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and just briefly introduce the witnesses once more, get them on the record, and then take questions. Mr. Daraban,
Yes.
may you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Valentine Daraban, 5408 North Kedzie in Chicago, 60625.
Thank you, Mr. Daraban. And just real quickly, you're employed by the applicant LLC, is that right?
Yes.
And that's in the capacity, again, as the project manager for this development, is that true?
Yes.
And you've been actively engaged for the last several years with all of the ongoing community review for the programming of this site. Is that also true?
Yes.
Lastly, Mr. Daraban, prior to this hearing, you were given a copy of certain findings of fact as well as an affidavit that were tendered to the board prior to this hearing. If you were to continue to testify here today, would the testimony that you would provide be consistent with the statements that were made in those documents?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Musawier, may you please once more state your name and address for the record?
Mr. Kareem, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Yes. 221 North LaSalle Street, Kareem Musawier. We're land planner, land use consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Musawier. And once more, you were retained by the applicant in an effort to evaluate the subject property as well as the other properties and improvements in the area, and to determine whether or not the proposed special use, which would allow for residential uses on the ground floor of the existing building, would be compatible with, compatible with all of the criteria and standards set forth for a special use in the current zoning ordinance. Is that right?
That's correct.
And did you have an opportunity to evaluate the subject property as well as the surrounding area?
I did.
And were you able to make a determination on whether or not the proposed special use does in fact meet all of the standards and criteria as set forth in the zoning ordinance?
Yes, I did.
And is it your professional opinion that this proposed special use, once more, does in fact meet all of those criteria?
Yes. The residential use on the west side of Ashland, as you indicated, is predominant between Grand Avenue and Chicago Avenue, where there's some small retail on the east side of Ashland Avenue. All the new trend of development on the west side is towards this type of residential use.
Thank you, Mr. Musawier. And in that regard, the evaluations that you made, as well as the findings and opinions, were set forth by you in a report that was tendered to the board prior to this hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And if you were to continue to testify here today, would your testimony be consistent with the statements, findings, and opinions that were set forth in that report?
Yes, they would.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we are happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Counselor. No questions for me. Are there any questions from the other board members? Seeing as there are none, I'm going to read the department's recommendation, but we'll take this under consideration.
Thank you.
The Department of Planning and Development recommends approval of the proposed conversion of the ground floor retail space in an existing 4-story 3-dwelling unit building to common residential space with no increase in dwelling units, provided the development is consistent with the design and layout of the plans and drawings dated April 6, 2020, prepared by Axios Architects and Consultants. All right, we'll take it under consideration. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good night, guys.
You too, you too. All right. We are on our final matter before continuances. So we're going to move to 352 and 353-20S.
All right. Good evening, Chairman and members of the ZBA. My name is Stuart Weiss. Can you hear and see me okay?
Yeah, we can, Mr. Weiss. So you are counselor, correct?
Yes. I'm from the law firm of Elrod Friedman, 325 North LaSalle, Suite 450.
Great. Before you begin, I'm just going to read in not the full agenda we did earlier for the dispensary, but just a few objectives that I want us to cover that hopefully in an order that you'll stick to. So first, I'd like you to identify the witnesses and their role in this project. Next, if you have an opening or general statement that you would like to make, present that. After that, I would like you to walk the board through the grow facility. And then after that, I'd like you to walk the board through the processing facility special use. Then we'll have questions on your security plans, community meeting, other miscellaneous requirements. And then I'll open up questions generally to the board. You don't have objection here. So I think we can work through this pretty expeditiously.
Absolutely. So once again, I am representing the applicants, Clade 9 Chicago LLC, which will be the operator of the proposed facility, and 5851 West Dickens. The witnesses who will be testifying tonight, the first will be Stuart Blankenhorn from Clade 9, the applicant. He is one of the managers of the facility and the applicant to the Department of Agriculture for the craft grow and processing license. We also have David Holmes from Clade 9, who is a partner in the applicant and also the resident expert on cultivation of cannabis. Our land planner, Michael Blue from Teskin Associates, will be speaking to the conformance with the special permit standards. And then Jack Hollingsworth is the project architect, and he will be available to discuss any questions that you have either about the interior or exterior plans. I'll begin with a brief opening that puts a little bit of context into this application. So the Chicago zoning ordinance divides cannabis craft growing and processing into two separate special uses. The state of Illinois, though, when an applicant is seeking a state license to conduct this type of business, does not differentiate the two. So a craft grower under state law is allowed to engage in both craft growing, which is defined under the city's ordinance as cultivation, drying, curing, and packaging of cannabis, as well as processing, which is defined under the city ordinance as extracting constituent chemicals or compounds to produce cannabis concentrate or incorporate cannabis or cannabis concentrate into a product formulation to produce cannabis product. The reason that I'm explaining that the different ways that the state approaches this versus the city is that it is very hard to extricate one use from the other. And when we speak about these, I will ask Mr. Blankenhorn, and we apologize that there are two Stewarts on this docket. So we'll try not to make that too confusing, but Mr. Blankenhorn will explain the operations of this. But literally these two uses will, feed into each other with not even the separation of like a full wall. It's going from one door to another. So specifically, just to give a overview of this use, that the applicant is seeking to renovate and repurpose an existing 73,000 square foot underutilized industrial building in the 29th Ward. It's right on the border between the 29th and the 36th Ward. It backs up on the south side to the railroad right-of-way that you can see on the screen right now. It's located in a planned manufacturing district, PMD 15. And has been used to date, or most recently, for an industrial recycling center. There's about 4 people who are currently employed there. The applicant seeks to completely renovate this building to make it a state-of-the-industry cannabis cultivation and processing facility. From the outside, you will not see much besides exterior improvements, which the architect will be able to speak to. And then restoration of the parkway. There's some non-conforming parking spaces that are currently being used by an off-site business that are going to be remediated to CDOT standards. One of the things that I would like the chair to take note of is that the applicant has fully complied with the Chicago zoning ordinances and the ZBA board's requirement that 3 community meetings be conducted for this cannabis business. The meetings were conducted in sequence on July 23rd with both an in-person and an online component. Notice of those was provided, and in our supplemental submission in August to the board, we provided all necessary affidavits, and including all of the materials that were presented, the publication, and the attendance list, which, although we did notify everyone as required by ordinance, we had a grand total of 2 people attend, 1 in person, and then 1 virtually. There were no objections, and the only concerns that were expressed mainly were whether there were going to be retail sales at this location. As this is not a dispensary, there will not be any retail sales. We believe that the applicant's proposal is going to be a net benefit to this location. There's going to be a number of good paying jobs, which, as I said, there are currently about 4 people employed at this property. Initially, there will be about 25 people after the phase 1 of the build out, scaling up to a capacity of 45 people. We're talking about, as I mentioned, reinvigorating a underused and somewhat dilapidated industrial building. And we're going to be reducing unsightly non-conforming street parking. We're going to be addressing all the negative impacts that a business like this could have by bringing them within the building envelope. All parking will be internal, coming through a overhead door. All loading will be done internally. There will be a fully enclosed internal loading dock. So no product will be no supplies will be delivered outside, and no product will be loaded for shipping out outside. Odors, waste disposal, and security will all be addressed by Mr. Blankenhorn, but we believe that all negative impacts are going to be fully addressed. So unless the chair has any specific concerns, I'd like to move on to discuss the operations of the facility, and we can, to the best of our ability, divide them between the processing and the cannabis cultivation and processing. So
that sounds good. And I would say, just to do it expeditiously, to the extent you want to bring in, at some point we need to get your planner's expert testimony. Feel free to bring them in congruently.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna start off with Mr. Blankenhorn. Stuart Blankenhorn, could you please introduce yourself and provide your address?
Yes, my name is Stuart Blankenhorn. My address is 1550 North Lakeshore Drive, Chicago.
And the chair will now swear you in.
Yeah. Mr. Blankenhorn, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Blankenhorn, could you please give a very quick summary of your professional background in both the packaged goods and food industry?
Yes, my background is in consumer packaged goods and food manufacturing. I've worked for a number of large and small companies. I've worked across functions, including operational, general management, and strategic advisory roles. The entire applicant team behind Clade 9 Chicago has a background in food and consumer packaged goods, including experience managing FDA and USDA regulated facilities, as well as food safety and regulatory compliance experience.
So one of the components that we were required to provide with this application was the full application that was sent to the Department of Agriculture to receive a state business license. What was your involvement in that application?
I had extensive involvement preparing all sections of that application in connection with the entire applicant group.
So you could speak knowledgeably to the all the contents, including operations, security, odor control, all the issues that we'll be discussing tonight.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Can you please describe in a summary fashion the difference between a craft growing facility and a cultivation center?
Yes. So a craft growing facility under the Cannabis Tax Use and Regulation Act is a facility that is initially limited to 5,000 square feet of flowering canopy of cannabis. That facility can also engage in the processing of cannabis and the production of some infused products. A cultivation center under the Cannabis CRTA can have up to 250,000 square feet of canopy. They have similar rights in what they can do. The main difference is scale. A craft growing facility, while it begins at 5,000 square feet, the Department of Agriculture is allowed to authorize up to 14,000 square feet of growing space over time.
So just because I'm a lawyer and I'm bad at math, we're talking about 1/50th the size of the large scale cannabis facilities that are in rural areas throughout the state.
Yes, that is the maximum allowable space. Most of the cultivation facilities have opted to not fully build out their allocated canopy at this time, but they could.
Okay, so the for a craft grower that is engaging in cultivation, can you tell us once again in a summary fashion what cultivation looks like? Are there fields? Is it greenhouses? Please.
Yeah. Everything within our facility happens inside and out of public view. It's a completely enclosed and secured facility. Nothing is visible to the public. There is no natural light in the facility. The environment is 100% controlled by us, the applicant. There is no fields. Everything is grown inside of rooms.
And how do you deal with, so how long does it actually take to grow a cannabis plant in one of your facilities? Or in a facility comparable to the one you proposed?
From the time you take a clipping from a mature mother plant to the time you harvest a plant, it's roughly 13 to 15 weeks.
And with the 5,000 square feet of canopy that you're discussing, which is, I take that to be growing space,
Yes.
How much actual cannabis product does that result in?
We'd be able to produce approximately 3,000 pounds of cannabis per year.
Okay. And now can you distinguish the processing, the processing aspects of the proposed operation?
So the Illinois CRTA authorizes two separate licenses, a craft growing license and a infusion license. The infusion license is solely for taking cannabis concentrates and adding them into foods. And so for all of the byproduct, as you trim and prepare cannabis for retail sales, while in other states that what's called trim would be sold to an infuser and they would extract the active ingredient and make edibles, that's not allowed in Illinois. And so in Illinois, the craft grower has to take the step of extracting the THC from that waste material, and then that extracted product can be transferred to an infuser who can then make edibles. And so the only processing that we will take place in will be CO2 extraction in a single room at the facility, where we will take waste product from the cannabis cultivation and turn it into a product that can be used by independent cannabis infusers to make cannabis edibles.
So the processing is, to simplify what you're saying or to kind of regurgitate it back to you, is basically taking a waste product from the cultivation process, extracting those last few drops of marketable substance, and then legally selling that as basically as a separate product. But
yes,
to an infuser. Is any of that sold directly to dispensaries?
It can be sold directly to dispensaries. It's our intent to sell that product to infusers.
Okay. What I'd like you to do now, and we may want to tag in our architect, but if you could give a very quick tour, and it's nice that we have the floor plan laid out here. Stu, if you could walk through basically how this property is actually going to be used, literally from as materials come in through the loading dock, and then as the product moves through the different rooms.
Yes. Could we shift back to the phase one plan? It's a little bit easier to read. It has a little bit more detail as well. 2 pages. Yes, here, right here.
Right.
So if you start, the process starts in the top left corner in the room marked mother. This is where mature plants will be kept and prevented from flowering. Every 2 weeks, cuttings will be taken from these plants. They'll be moved to the room directly to the east, marked EV. And that room, they will be rooted. Successful clones that grow roots will be moved to the veg room further to the east, where they will grow for 2 to 3 weeks. Every 2 weeks, a set of plants from that room will be moved into one of the 5 rooms marked F1 through F5, where flowering will be induced by controlling the photoperiod. Then over a period of approximately 10 weeks, those plants will mature and produce cannabis. When those cannabis buds, when those plants are ready for harvest, they will be cut down and hung in the drying room on the far west side of the building, marked Dry 1. They will remain there until their water activity is low enough such that they will not grow mold. At that time, the product will be moved into airtight buckets and moved into the room marked vault, where they'll be held to cure. That vault is a DEA compliant vault for holding Schedule 1 drugs. Once the product has cured over a period of 2 to 3 weeks, they will be moved in small batches into the trimming room, where they'll be hand trimmed and all of the excess foliage will be removed from the buds. At that point, each batch will be tested by an independent licensed laboratory. Once test results are back, that product will be packaged inside of the packaging room. Once final product is packaged, it will be moved into the vault, the finished goods vault, which is also DEA compliant, which you see next to the truck loading dock in the middle of the building on the north side. At that point, it will be ready for sale. A licensed cannabis transport company will come in through the truck dock. The truck dock will be locked. Orders will be loaded into the cannabis transportation vehicle, and the vehicle will leave. Byproduct from the trimming process will be stored in that cannabis vault until it is ready to be extracted in the room marked extraction. We will use a process of CO2 solventless extraction to create that bulk oil, which will be sold to independent infusers.
And when we discuss extraction, that is the processing aspect
Yes.
of the business that we were referring to. At any point, are the operations of this facility going to be visible to the public?
At no point.
Okay. And going through the other 5 senses, will you be able to smell this from the public? And if not, how not?
Yes, we will have an extensive odor mitigation plan to mitigate odors that may emanate from the building. The building will be kept at negative pressure to the surrounding environment. The main exhaust will be through the indoor parking structure, and all exhausts from the building will have MERV 13 or finer filters to remove the particulate matter that causes that odor.
Is MERV 13, is that an industry standard?
It's an industry standard for the level of filtration. It's slightly below what you would call a HEPA filter, which would be about a MERV 17 or 18.
Now, one of the things that we do want to make note of is that the state of Illinois, when it approves these, approves a limited amount of canopy space. And the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act contemplates that craft growers, once they show their ability to cultivate acceptable product and also to manage inventory, that they can apply to expand their canopy space. As Mr. Blankenhorn previously stated, this facility will start off with 5,000 feet of canopy space. Mr. Blankenhorn, do you have plans to expand canopy space at this location?
We do. We intend to expand canopy space to the extent we receive approvals from the Department of Agriculture. The current floor plan you see is capable of housing up to 7,000 square feet of canopy, although it will be limited to 5,000 square feet initially.
When you say this floor plan, you mean the actual build out that is shown on the plan that is displayed on the screen?
Yes, right now.
And what are the increments in which you could expand your canopy?
Annually, the department may opt to expand canopy licenses by up to 3,000 square feet to a maximum allowable total of 14,000 square feet.
And then if you do expand beyond, you said that this current floor plan could accommodate 7,000 square feet of canopy. if you were authorized to go beyond that, for instance, going for the first 3,000 increment from 5,000 to 8,000 or from 8,000 to 11,000, where would those plants go?
5 additional flower rooms that would mirror the 5 flower rooms shown on this floor plan would be added immediately to the south of the current mother and vegetation room, as shown on the phase 1 and phase 2 plan 3 slides forward.
Would that, and we can advance, if we can advance the slides forward? That's the slide. So is the area shaded in orange? Is that what you're referring to?
It is.
And is that area within the envelope of the existing building?
It is.
Would that require any exterior alteration of the building to expand those rooms?
It would include the addition of additional dry coolers in the rear setback of the building, but no alteration to the exterior of the building.
So the addition of, did you say, is it HVAC?
Dry coolers, HVAC units.
Okay, so it would be equipment, but not an expansion of the actual, okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to quickly go through some issues here related to the operations, which are very salient to surrounding property owners. Can you please give an overview of how security will be handled in this facility, both internal and external?
Yes. So for security, and very briefly, the entire site, both internal and external, will be on constant 24-hour video surveillance. These cameras will be monitored off-site 24 hours a day. Additionally, the Illinois State Police will have live access to these cameras as well. All entrances, exits, as well as all internal doors in the facility are access controlled and will require a key card and or numeric code to move through. There will also be motion sensors and other alarms. There are 2 vaults for containing any product that is active, both in process goods and finished goods. Yeah, I think that covers the vault.
We've talked about vaults for product. What about currency? Will there be any currency held on the premises?
Our standard operating procedure is to have no currency on the premises. We do not accept members of the public in the facility. We do not transact with the general public. Our procedure will be to take bank transactions, or if we need to take a cash payment from a vendor, it will be taken from the vendor's premises directly to the bank via our armored car.
Okay, going from one green to another green, back from currency to product. Can you talk about inventory controls? I know that yes. The CRTA has a very strict requirements about how plants are tracked. Can you quickly run through us on that?
Yes, so all plants are individually barcoded and registered in an electronic inventory management system that's visible to the state from the time they are 6 inches tall until the time they are sold to a consumer. Physical inventories will take place on a weekly basis, and there are procedures in place to investigate and report any discrepancies to the Indiana State Police and the Department of Agriculture.
And then one issue that I alluded to was that the loading dock is completely internal. Can you discuss how both deliveries in and deliveries of materials in and shipments out will work?
Yes, so all deliveries and shipments will happen within the enclosed and locked loading dock. All deliveries will take place with a licensed cannabis transport company. The applicant has not applied for a licensed transport company. We will use a third-party transport company. And whenever cannabis is being loaded or unloaded, there will be a licensed Illinois security guard on the premises.
And when you say that Clade 9 is not going to apply for a transport, is that you're not going to have your own trucks?
We are not going to have our own trucks. We're going to use a licensed third party to do deliveries.
So you're not going to have a fleet parked out either in your parking area or, okay. No. And then waste disposal. How does that work?
Yeah, so all solid waste generated from the facility will be stored inside the facility until it is picked up for delivery to a solid waste facility. Any cannabis containing waste will first be blended with either compostable waste or inorganic waste to render it unusable before it leaves the premises.
Those are the questions that I had for Mr. Blankenhorn about the general operations. Before I move on to questions for our architect, were there any questions from the board that we can address?
Questions at this point? Thanks, Counselor. Let's keep going, and then we'll take them at the end. Appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Hollingsworth, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, and we can hear you just fine. So if you could introduce yourself and provide your address as well.
Okay, it's Jack Hollingsworth, 5367 North College Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm a licensed Illinois architect.
And what firm are you with?
Array Architecture and Interiors.
And you said that you're a licensed Illinois architect. What has been your involvement with this project?
We were involved in designing the facility with the input of Stewart, along with our mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers.
And when you were designing this facility, did you have to abide by certain standards that were imposed by the state of Illinois or the Department of Agriculture?
Yes, both.
And in your professional opinion, is this building fully compliant with all the requirements for this type of facility to operate in the state of Illinois?
Yes.
From a physical standpoint?
Right.
Yeah. And I know that we had some back and forth with both CDOT and the planning staff of the city regarding the access. Can you walk through how this building is accessed by both trucks and cars that would be coming into the facility?
If you could go back to the slide that is phase one again, that's more detailed. In the northwest corner is where the internal parking is. There's 15 spaces there, and we're exceeding all spatial requirements in that area. There will be a new 20-foot wide door that enters that area so that all parking is internal. And then just to the east of that is the existing truck dock that's capable of holding 2 trucks. And we will not be putting semis in here. Largest would be box type trucks or vans even. So that's the the way the building is entered.
And I'm going to ask that we back up the slides to the photographs of what the front of the building currently looks like. Okay. Yes. Perfect. Okay. Mr. Hollingsworth, are these actual striped spaces that are in the front of the building?
No, this is all non-compliant space from a auto repair shop that's across the street. Most of those cars you see there on the right are derelict vehicles that are just sitting there. And our full intent is to bring this whole front back up to CDOT standards with landscaping, sidewalks, and to get these cars out of here.
And so that work is now included in the site plan that we have submitted to staff. Is that correct?
Correct.
There we go. Yeah. So the intention of the applicant will be to fully restore the public right-of-way that extends into up to the Dickens, the West Dickens Avenue street frontage. Will include all required streetscaping, curbing, and tree planting. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Those are the only direct examination questions that I have for Mr. Hollingsworth. Does the board have any questions regarding the design or configuration of either the interior or exterior of the building?
Council, that was very thorough, I'll say. So let's ask any other members of the board have questions? Okay, Go ahead, Counselor. This is helpful.
Okay, our final witness is Michael Blue. Michael, are you with us?
I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
And we can hear and see you. Wonderful. Can you please introduce yourself, state your firm's name and your address?
Sure. Again, for the record, my name is Michael Blue. I'm a principal consultant with Tesca Associates. We're at 627 Grove Street in Evanston.
And can you give your professional qualifications, a summary of the various qualifications that allow you to opine on land planning issues?
Sure. I've been practicing planning for 35 years, both in the public and private sector. I'm a member of actually a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners.
And did you prepare a report analyzing the zoning and the proposed use and the surrounding land uses for this application?
I did.
And I believe it was submitted, it was dated August 19th. Did you also assist us in preparing the draft findings of fact that were submitted?
I did.
And did I prepare an affidavit that accurately reflected your conclusions that this application has complies with the city zoning ordinance and the requirements for planned developments?
Yes, you did. That's correct.
Not planned, special uses. Okay, so in a quick summary of that, if you could give in précis a summary of the surrounding location of the property, how this use fits in, and then kind of the highlights of how it satisfies not only the standards for special uses, but since this is in a PMD, how it addresses the PMD standards. We don't have to go line by line, but what you consider the highlights here.
And Counselor, really quick, I will say that we recognize Mr. Blue's expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of reviewing the proposed use in regard to the standards for special use, a couple of things that are notable. One is its location. It's an existing building, an existing PMD. In that regard, it complies with the applicable zoning standards. The surrounding land uses to the north are primarily residential until you get up to Grand Avenue. Directly north of the property, though, is that auto repair site that was previously mentioned and a multifamily use. But the area south to the tracks, as you saw when Stuart showed the graphic, is a solidly manufacturing area. So in this regard, the existing building and proposed use are consistent and compatible with its existing surroundings. The second use that's most notable, and I don't really need to go into this much at all, is that so much of the use is entirely indoors. Really makes it rather invisible to the area. And in that regard, the operations and proposed use are compatible and consistent with the surrounding character. And also the information you just saw about restoring, in fact, it's on the screen now, about restoring the right-of-way will increase pedestrian safety and comfort in the area. In terms of the PMD and the standards that relate to that, again, the testimony that you've heard talks about the notable characteristics of the building and the use. There's no outside storage, there's no delivery vehicles blocking the building or the sidewalk or the roads. There's no employees making excessive use of street parking as may occur in some manufacturing areas. In addition, the plans show that the potential nuisances have been addressed, as you heard Mr. Blankenhorn state. In that regard, the adverse impacts that might be on existing manufacturing operations are really mitigated, and also reduced are any potential impacts that might affect the ability to market the area. So in that regard, the proposed use meets the standards for special use.
That along with the draft findings of fact and the Mr. Blue's affidavit really sum up the issues for us. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Blue?
I do not. Do any other members of the board have questions for Mr. Blue? I
So
will say, Counselor, this was a really, I say thorough in a good way. This was a really thorough overview of your witnesses and everything that goes into these applications. So thank you.
That concludes our case in chief. I can provide a closing statement, but I kind of feel like Mr. Blue hit it on the head. One point that I would like to make, and Mr. Blankenhorn, if you could unmute yourself.
Yes.
I would just like to verify, will there be any external signage on this property identifying the business or the operations therein?
No, there'll only be a sign indicating that there's 24-hour video surveillance and that no one under the age of 21 is permitted to enter the building as per state law requirement.
And with that, I have nothing further.
Okay, great. I'll give the board members one last opportunity. Does anyone have any questions? You pretty much hit everything, Counselor. So with none, we'll take it under consideration, and we appreciate everyone's time and the work that went into this.
Was there a staff recommendation?
Doing my job for me. So it's been a long day. There's two. So we'll take the first one is 35220S. The Department of Planning and Development recommends approval of the proposed cannabis craft grower facility, provided number one, the special use is issued solely to the applicant, Clade 9 Chicago LLC and 5851 West Dickens LLC. Number two, the proposed shared cannabis processing use as per application 35320S has been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Number three, no retail sales, samples, or physical product displays or stock are allowed at this facility. And number four, the development is consistent with the design and layout of the plans dated October 14th, 2020, prepared by Array Architecture and Interiors, Inc., including full restoration of the public right-of-way in accordance with CDOT regulations and standards. And for 35320S, the Department of Planning and Development recommends approval of the proposed cannabis processor facility, provided number one, the special use is issued solely to the applicant, Clade 9 Chicago LLC and 5851 West Dickens LLC. Number two, the proposed shared cannabis grower use as per application 35220S has been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Number three, no retail sales, samples, or physical product displays or stock are allowed at this facility. And number four, the development is consistent with the design and layout of the plans dated October 14th, 2020, prepared by Array Architecture and Interiors, Inc., including full restoration of the public right-of-way in accordance with CDOT regulations and standards. We'll take it under consideration. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you everyone who's on still for your endurance throughout this. We are going to work through these last ones quickly, ideally. We're going to take the next item out of order because of some extenuating circumstances. So that's going to be 28320Z and 28420Z.
This is Becky.
Ms. Keeler, just to confirm before I swear you in, you are representing yourself in this matter, correct?
That is correct. And
Okay,
I
great.
believe the architect is jumping on to Leanne.
Great. Let's give the architect a moment.
Chairman, I don't have a Leanne signed in.
Okay, we can go ahead without her.
Do we have, is Mr. Kolpak here?
He is.
Okay, great. Ms. Keeler, first will you state your name and address and I'll get you sworn in?
Becky Keeler at 1636 West Warren Boulevard.
Hi, this is Paul Kolpak.
Okay, great. Great, 1 second, Mr. Kolpak. So, Ms. Keeler, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Great. So what, give us an overview of what brings you here today.
So we live at a property where the lot is 19.94 feet wide. And the adjacent property to the west, 1638 West Warren, has a coach house that sits on the property line between us and them. And so they have a walkway that extends the east 3 feet of the property and then to go across the property. And so we cannot build a garage to cover our cars. And right now we have to choose between either having an outdoor space of where we would be parking or the 2 parking spaces. So we would like to have a carport, a raised area that would have no walls on it, but just a raised area so that we could park our cars and then also have an outdoor space, which would be above the carport. And as you can see there, during the summer, we even put out a pool. So really we're having to choose between outdoor space and having a place to park.
Okay, great. And just for some overview, you have been in front of this board before on this matter, correct?
So the adjacent property that Paul Kolpeck is representing wanted clarification on how we were not going to interrupt the easement. And so it was just an immediate continuance last month in September. And the owner of 1638 and us met again, and we said, as the plans note here, there will be no walls, so we will not be impacting the walk for the tenants of 1638.
Okay, great. So that was kind of the compromise that was reached with the neighbors?
Well, we've never said that we were going to have any walls because we knew we couldn't compromise them getting to their area, that they would not be able to get there if we put any walls up. So this was just a raised carport so that we had outdoor space and we could cover our cars.
Okay. Okay, any questions from the board for Ms. Keeler now, or else we can move on to Mr. Kolpak? Great, Mr. Kolpak. Will you state your name and address and we'll be sworn in?
My name is Paul Kolpak. The office is at 6767 North Milwaukee in Niles. Just as a point of clarification, because we've used the term easement and walkway simultaneously, there is an easement. My client is in agreement with the carport. We would just ask that it be put into record that there would be no walls. That allows us to have access to the alley, and we're fine with all the other variations requested by the applicant.
All right, thanks, Mr. Kolpak. We recognize you're an attorney, so we don't need to swear you in. Any questions from the board? Sounds like there are none. So we will take this under consideration.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Be well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Alderman Burnett.
Oh, Alderman, how are you?
No problem. It's a long meeting, man. Y'all beating us out at zoning and plan commission over there.
I did not realize. Are you on for this matter?
Yeah. So actually, I live on this block.
Okay.
So I'm here as the alderman and the neighbor, and we're in full support of it.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Alderman, and thanks for sticking this out on a Friday night. But we'll accept that testimony.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you, Alderman.
Good evening.
Bye, Beck.
Good night.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's move back to regular order. That brings us to matters 1620Z and 1720Z for the property at 4124 South Berkeley Avenue.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully I have Willie and Connie Brickhouse and Mr. Gilbert Leves, their architect.
Yeah, do we have the Brickhouses on?
Yes. Hello. We're here.
Hi, okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you both for sticking this out.
Do we have the architect also, Mr. Gilbert Leves?
I don't see Mr. Gilbert Levi's here. This is tech support.
Okay. He was in Friday night prayers, but he was coming back. Could I text him and see if...
Yeah, Counselor, I apologize to your clients for doing this, but if it works for you, we will go to the next matter and then we'll come back to you. I think it's probably a good idea to have him on.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, no, we need him. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay, so now we are going to move to the next matter on the agenda, which is 277, 278, 279, and 280-20Z for the property at 1620 West Grand Avenue. I know that I believe that there is opposition on this one, and it looks like, yeah, I see Nick is still on. Okay. Nick Zettel, that is. We've got Nick Fatikas as counselor.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes. Is Nick Fatikas on?
Yes, I am on.
Okay, great. All right, Nick, let's get started.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Again, for the record, Nick Fatikas from the law offices of Sam Banks, located at 221 North LaSalle Street. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, 1618 through 24 Grand LLC. The applicant owns the subject property located at 1620 West Grand Avenue. The subject site has been home to a one-story office and administration building that was most recently used by the Esperanza Community Organization. They were actually there for about 50 years. Esperanza has recently consolidated its operations to a neighboring property and has since vacated the site. Now that Esperanza is out, the applicant is proposing to develop the property with a new 4-story, 8-unit condominium building. The subject property is located in a C1-2 zoning district, and a special use is required to permit the 2 proposed first-floor duplex units. Additionally, because the subject lot is only 100 feet deep, the applicant is seeking variations to reduce the minimum lot area requirement, increase the allowable building height, and increase the size of the accessory building for the rear setback. We have 3 witnesses testifying today. On behalf of the applicant, Mr. Anthony Lamonia, our project architect, Mr. Bill Kokalius, and our MAI designated appraiser, Mr. Terrence O'Brien. And with that, Chairman, I'd like to call my first witness, Mr. Anthony Lamonia.
And now let me just say something at the beginning. I know that this case has been before us in the past. So I'd just like to remind everyone that we're treating this as a brand new case. Nothing from the prior record should be incorporated in. And as we're a brand new board, these are brand new applications on new denials. So just a reminder, hate to be repetitive, but we're taking it as a brand new case.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Your Honor. And with that, Tony, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Can you please state your full name and address for the record?
Sure. Anthony Lamonia, 5 East 14th Place, Chicago, Illinois, 60605.
Chair, do you want to swear in the witness?
Anthony, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anthony, you are a managing member of the applicant 1618 through 24 Grand LLC, is that right?
Yes.
As I stated, that entity owns the subject property at 1620 West Grand Avenue, correct?
It does, yes.
The subject lot measures 73.5 feet wide by only 100 feet deep, correct?
Correct.
And it's, so because of that depth dimension, it's 25 feet shorter than a standard depth city lot. Is that true?
It is.
And today the property is improved with a one-story office or administrative building and surface parking, right?
Yes.
And your plan is to take down the existing structure and redevelop the property with a new 4-story, 8-unit residential building. Is that right?
Yes.
And your plan calls for 2 first-floor duplex units and 6 simplex units above. Is that right?
Yes.
And the 8 residential units will be supported by 8 parking spaces located at the rear of the subject site. Is that true?
Yes.
The subject property is located in a C1-2 zoning district, right?
It is.
And a special use is required in order to permit the 2 first-floor duplex units. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
And additionally, because of the substandard lot depth dimension, you're seeking a variation to reduce the minimum lot area total from 8,000 square feet to 7,350 square feet, right?
Yes.
And that's that reduction would be within an 8% of the technical minimum lot area requirement. Is that true?
Yes.
And again, that relief is specifically required to permit the 8th unit, the 8th residential unit, I should say, to replace the retail unit at grade.
Correct.
You're also seeking a variation to permit the height increase from 45 feet to 48.58 feet. Is that true?
Yes.
And we'll hear more about this from Mr. Kokalius, the project architect, but really the additional 3.5 feet will allow you to provide consistent floor to ceiling heights of 9 feet. Is that true?
Yes.
And that floor to ceiling height dimension is really, it's become quite typical for new construction condo product and still very much in keeping with the building heights of the neighboring structures along West Grand Avenue. Is that right?
Yes.
And lastly, you're seeking a variation to permit the footprint of the detached garage at the rear of the lot. True?
Yes.
And that too is a function of the short lot depth dimension, which reduces the overall size of the technical rear setback for the lot, right?
Yes.
Anthony, do you believe you've become familiar with the makeup and character of this stretch of West Grand Avenue?
Yes, I believe I am.
And this section of Grand Avenue is located just west of Ashland. Is that true?
Yes.
It actually abuts a residential neighborhood and even residential zoning districts to the north and to the west. Is that right?
Yes.
There are also a number of other all residential multi-unit buildings in the immediate area, also along Grand Avenue. Is that true?
Yes.
And that's true. You know that because 4 of the neighboring buildings directly across the street from the subject site are multi-unit residential buildings with ground floor or first floor residential units. Is that right?
That's correct, they are.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, those addresses are 1613, 1617, 1623 through 25, and 1627 West Grand Avenue, respectively.
Got it. Thank you, Nick.
Tony, at the same time, is it also your understanding that there are several vacant commercial storefronts in the immediate area?
Yes, several.
In fact, you identified 16 retail vacancies just along West Grand Avenue within a 4-block radius of the subject site, right?
Correct.
And one of those commercial vacancies includes the storefront that's in the building immediately to the east of the subject property at 1610 West Grand Avenue, right?
Yes.
And given these conditions, both you and your lender are seriously concerned about the viability of introducing new construction retail units into the marketplace. Is that right?
Correct.
And these concerns are only intensified by COVID and its impact on local business and the retail market throughout the city. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
But given the fact that the neighboring first floor residential units are fully occupied, you're confident the 2 4-bedroom first floor duplex units that are being proposed would be in demand at the subject site. Is that fair?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you very much, Tony. Bill, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Bill, can you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Bill Kokalius, 188 North Wells, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Licensed architect, state of Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Catalius. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Great.
And Bill, you're familiar with the subject property at 1620 West Grand Avenue?
I am.
And you designed the proposed 8-unit residential building for the subject site, is that right?
That's correct.
In order to permit the program, the applicant is seeking a special use specifically for the 2 first-floor residential units, is that right?
That is correct.
The applicant is also seeking 3 companion variations, right?
That's correct.
As we stated, we're seeking a minimum lot area reduction for the 8 residential units from 8,000 square feet to 7,350. Is that right?
Yes.
And that request is directly related to the subject lot's 100-foot depth dimension and the corresponding lot area total. Is that right?
That's correct. The lot is 100 feet deep.
So if we had a 125-foot lot, we wouldn't need that variation.
No.
Even so, the proposed reduction is still within 8% of the technical lot area requirement for the substandard lot. Is that fair?
That is very fair and correct.
We're also seeking about a 3.5-foot height increase to permit 9-foot floor to ceiling heights within the building. Is that right?
Yes.
And although that 3.5 feet may seem negligible, it's actually quite meaningful to the design because it allows consistency between each of the 4 floors above grade.
That's correct.
That additional height also helps you design, that additional height also helps your design meet a demand in the residential marketplace, especially for new construction condominium product. Is that right?
That's correct. Minimum 9 feet is usually what is the minimum requirement for new condo buildings.
And at 48.5 feet, the proposed building will still be shorter than the height of the 58-foot tall neighboring mixed-use building to the east. Is that right?
That is correct.
And that 48.5-foot dimension is still less than the 50-foot height dimension that would otherwise be allowed on the same lot if our building were mixed use in the C12 district. Is that right?
That's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, we did submit an additional elevation sheet showing our building in context to the neighboring building. It's the one that's being shown right now. Thank you. That was submitted after our initial findings of fact submittal, just to give some context of how the proposed building would align with the neighboring building, specifically the neighboring building to the east. And Bill, lastly, we're seeking to increase the allowable size of the detached garage from 1,323 square feet to 1,442.4 square feet. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And again, that variation is a direct result of the short lot depth because it reduces the overall size of the rear setback on a substandard lot. Is that true?
That's true.
And that relief, the relief for the accessory building allows us to permit an 8-car garage, which would include 1 handicap parking spaces and 7 normal spaces, right?
That's correct.
The alternative would be to have 7 garage spaces and 1 surface parking space, right?
That's correct.
But again, this is a response to the technical rear setback calculation created or caused by the substandard lot.
Yes.
Bill, do you believe your building design fits with the other multi-unit residential buildings in the immediate area?
Yes, I do.
And do you believe the building will be compatible with the character of the immediate neighborhood?
It is compatible, like you indicated before. The buildings directly across the street are all residential buildings.
And those buildings are, call it 65 or 70 feet apart from our site. Is that right?
Correct.
Bill, in your professional opinion, will the granting of these variations be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property or improvements in the immediate area?
No.
Will these variations impair an adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent properties?
No, they will not.
With respect to the proposed building height increase, is it your professional opinion that the proposed height is still compatible with the trend of development in the immediate area for both mixed use and all residential multi-unit buildings, specifically along Grand Avenue.
Yes, they are.
And again, the proposed building height of 48.5 feet is still less than the 50-foot allowance for a mixed-use building at this very same property.
That is correct.
Bill, in your opinion, will these variations increase the danger of fire or endanger public safety?
No,
Will these variations substantially increase congestion in the public streets in the immediate area?
no,
Do you believe these variations will substantially diminish or impair property values in the area?
no,
And lastly, do you believe these variations will alter the essential character of the locality?
no, absolutely not.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I call my third witness, Mr. Terrence O'Brien.
Let's get Terrence on the record.
Terry, can you
Yes.
state your address for the record, please?
Terrence M. O'Brien, O''B', professional real estate appraiser, consultant, maintain offices at 7383 North Lincoln Avenue, Lincolnwood, Illinois.
Great. And Mr. O'Brien, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Great. And we acknowledge your expertise.
Thank you.
Terry, are you familiar with the subject property at 1620 West Grand Avenue?
Yes, I am familiar. I've had an opportunity to do a substantial amount of appraisal and zoning work in the area. More specifically, I testified on this same property several years ago. And again, I familiarized myself with the property, inspected it in preparation for preparing my report and testifying here today.
And the scope of your assignment in this case was to evaluate whether the requested special use would meet the criteria for special uses as set forth in the code. Is that right?
That, as well as addressing the various criteria for variations, yes.
And again, I want to be clear, you physically inspected the subject property?
Numerous occasions, yes.
And upon those inspections, you also inspected neighboring properties in the surrounding area. Is that right?
That is correct.
Can you please give the board just a brief overview of the character as you found it?
Yes, the subject property is located on the north side of Grand Avenue. Its dimensions are approximately 73.5 feet, fronting on Grand Avenue by a depth 100 feet. This, given the fact that it's 100 foot in depth, it is a substandard lot from the standpoint of depth. I'd also point out the subject site consists of 3 lots, and each one is substandard. That is, they're 24.5 feet in width, where the standard lot in the city of Chicago would be 25 feet. So there is a substandard as far as the width goes as well. Immediately to the east of the property is a multi-story structure that's mixed commercial, retail in nature. Located east of that are similar structures that are older, however. To the west of the subject is a multi-story older building. And then west of that is Marshfield Avenue, and west of that is some institutional uses that are residential zoned in nature. Immediately to the north of the property is a paved alley. North of that, there are residential uses. Most of the uses adjoining the subject property to the north and to the west are either zoned RS3 or RT5, I believe. To the south of the subject is Grand Avenue, as I previously mentioned. South of that are several multi-story residential structures that were constructed anywhere from the last 20 years or so. I would note that these 4 structures, that are more specifically across the street from the subject, have residential uses on the ground floor. I'd also point out that some of those structures required special uses in order to construct the ground floor on residential. And also some of those structures also required reduction in rear yard setback, given the fact that their depth on that side of the street, that would be the south side of Grand Avenue, is 100 feet, which is similar in size to the depth of the subject.
Great, Terry, in your inspection and based on your inspection and your findings and conclusions, did you determine whether the proposed 2 first-floor residential units at the subject property would be appropriate and compatible with the surrounding land uses?
In my opinion, they most definitely would be, given the character of the area, not only the residents to the north, but the residential structures to the south. I would also point out that in the 4-block radius of the subject along Grand Avenue, I'm aware of at least 17 residential uses within that spread along the Grand Avenue. I'd also point out that located in that same span of along Grand Avenue of approximately 4 blocks, there are at least 16 retail stores that are vacant and available for use or rent, so the word would be.
And Terry, I want to make sure these points are clear for the record. You personally identified 16 vacant retail storefronts within that 4-block radius of the subject property. Is that right?
That is correct. And in fact, I could read the actual addresses into the record if you so desire.
I'll defer to the chairman on that. Are those addresses referenced in your report, Terry?
The specific addresses are not, however, the mention of the fact that there are the vacant 16 commercials or retail spaces are, but the addresses are not.
The mention of the space is sufficient for us.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, sir.
No need to read the addresses.
Okay, thank you.
And then Terry, you also identified again 17 ground floor residential units. Is that fair?
Along Grand Avenue within four blocks of the subject, yes.
And to the best you could tell, all 17 of those units were occupied active residential units.
Yes, they were.
And based on your involvement in the immediate area with other zoning applications, your involvement in the prior application concerning this property, is it your understanding that these vacancy and occupancy rates have really been consistent for at least the last 24 months?
Yes, they have been. As a matter of fact, when I testified on 2 years ago, I believe at that time there were 17 vacant stores, and now there's 16 stores that are vacant or available for lease. They're not all the same stores, but I would note that just in the 1700 block of Grand Avenue, a recent construction of a new multi-story building, and specifically that address is 1722 West Grand Avenue, a building that was recently constructed. There's 2 retail units available right now for rent. I'm also aware of instances in the area where buildings had been scheduled to be developed, but for lack of, I'm not sure exactly why, but with the economy being what it is and the uncertainty and the weakness in the retail market with this COVID-19 situation, I could see where many of the buildings would not go ahead and be constructed, especially if they're anything that's related to commercial, because of the number of vacancies in the area where there does appear to be definitely a demand for residential uses.
And that's really the takeaway. The retail units have continued to struggle over the last at least 24-month period. And at the same time, the first floor residential units, to the best of your knowledge, have remained fully occupied.
Yes, they are. There certainly is a demand for it based upon the market study done by the applicant and based upon my observations in the area where there isn't any vacancies to speak of for residential uses.
And Terry, you did prepare a written zoning report containing your findings and conclusions for both the requested special use and the variations. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And a copy of that report, as you understand it, has been submitted to the board under my cover. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
And if you were to continue to testify, that testimony would be consistent with the findings and conclusions contained in the report. Is that true?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
We do have an objector, Chairman, so I would ask that I can get Mr. O'Brien's answers to the standards. Terry, is it your professional opinion that the requested variations will not substantially diminish or impair property values in the immediate area?
My opinion, they'll have no impact upon property values in the area. Actually, it'll put to use the property that really isn't developed to its highest and best use. It'll be harmonious and compatible with other land uses in the area. It'll provide substantial need for residents in the area. Also will provide added taxes for the real estate tax base for the county as well as City of Chicago.
And with respect to the special use standards, is it your professional opinion that the requested special use will comply with all the applicable standards of the ordinance?
In the event the variations were granted, yes, and the special use is granted, correct, it would.
And you believe the special use is in the interest of public convenience and will not have an significant adverse impact on the general welfare of the neighborhood, is that right?
It'll have no adverse impact, not significant or any adverse impact. It'll be harmonious, compatible.
And Terry, again, to that point, you believe that the special use is compatible with the character of the surrounding area in terms of site planning, building scale, and project design?
Yes, I would point out too, and I think it's been mentioned earlier, that in the event that the building did contain retail on the ground floor, you could construct a 50-foot high building, whereas the variation they're seeking is from 45 feet to 48.5 feet. So it's still under the 50 feet that one could anticipate, a neighbor could anticipate, if you were to use the ground floor for retail or commercial purposes.
And Terry, is it also your opinion that the special use is compatible with the character of the area in terms of operating characteristics? In this case, how it operates as a residential unit, outdoor lighting, noise, and traffic generation?
Yes, there will not be any substantial traffic generation. We're talking about 8 units. I point out that parking in the area is at a premium. However, in this particular instance, there's 8 on-site parking spaces, garages available, which will alleviate the demand for street parking in the area.
And Terry, again, you believe that the proposed 8-unit building will operate much the same way the other all residential buildings, even on the south side of Grand Avenue, already do. Is that true?
Yes, I would think their hours of operation or of use would be similar to any other residential buildings in the area. And in fact, the amount of traffic generated could be substantially less than if you were to develop the ground floor with retail or commercial purposes.
And lastly, Terry, do you believe the proposed special use is designed to promote pedestrian safety and comfort?
Yes, there will be no interaction of pedestrians with the traffic generated by the proposed use. All the traffic for this proposed use will utilize the existing alley to the north of the subject building.
Thank you very much, Terry. Mr. Chairman, before we conclude the applicant's case in chief, I wanted to refer the board members to the exhibits and documents that were submitted along with our findings of fact for this matter. The first exhibit is just a zoning map showing the zoning districts in the immediate area. For establishing foundation, I personally printed the map from the city's website, and then in yellow highlighter, I identified the buildings with existing ground floor residential units, as well as residential zoning districts that would actually require residential uses to be established on the first floor. Again, based on the surrounding land uses, we absolutely believe the proposed ground floor residential units will be consistent and compatible at the subject site. The second document is a zoning board resolution from call number 5398-S concerning 1611 West Grand Avenue. I absolutely acknowledge that this board does not establish precedent, and I'm not offering the resolution for that purpose at all. Instead, I'm offering the document as evidence of a pattern of development along West Grand Avenue, west of Ashland, that began about 20 years ago. The prior approval speaks directly against there being an adverse impact, which there clearly hasn't been, because the area has continued to grow and prosper. And it will further establish our position regarding the compatibility of the proposed all residential unit or all residential building with the surrounding buildings and neighboring land uses. Again, the general pattern of mid-block residential buildings, along with a struggling and uncertain retail market, both before and now during COVID, should help the board understand our concerns about the viability of introducing new construction retail product mid-block at the subject site. And lastly, I'd like to reference the 7 letters of support we received from neighboring property owners and actually a few fellow business owners in the immediate neighborhood. And with that, our team is available to answer any questions you or the board members may have about the proposal.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Nick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it over to the objector, and then I wanna get all the questions on that we may have for you guys generally. I think it would help us shorten up our questions if we hear the objector first. So Nick, are you on? Nick Z?
Indeed. Thank you, Chairman.
You've already been sworn in today, so go right ahead.
Great. So you don't need my name and address?
Give that part again.
Okay. So for the record, my name is Nicholas Zettel. I work at the First Ward office with Alderman Laspada, 1958 North Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. I'm here on behalf of the Alderman and the community group Chicago Grand Neighbors Association. Chairman, in the interest of time, I just want to ask a clarifying question to make sure that our letter and the CGNA's memo was indeed received, because if you have those on record, I'm
sorry, what memo was received?
There was we submitted prior to the deadline a letter and a memo written by the community group. And I just want to make sure those are received, because if they were, I will not repeat anything. I just want to.
Nick, we did receive that.
You have them?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Mr. Chairman, if it'll be allowed, I just have a couple of really quick questions that I would like to ask then to establish hardship, because I think the base of our case is that I do understand that the applicant is stating this as a residential area, but I would like to emphasize that the C1 zoning stretch right here at this corner of Ashland and Grand could not be a better place for commercial and retail purposes. And so just even reading from the Chicago's zoning ordinance for how it describes this zoning, it is actually intended to be applied in compact nodes at the intersection of two or more streets in a cohesive fashion. And so if you look at this stretch of zoning on the north side of Grand Avenue here, it's perfectly suitable for C1 zoning. And I would also submit that Ashland Avenue is one of the best transit served streets in the city. And Grand Avenue itself, it may be more auto oriented. The transit may not be as strong as Ashland in terms of pedestrian transit, but it is also a major thoroughfare. So I would submit that forward thinking here, you've really got to look at this as a fantastic opportunity for commercial development. You couldn't find a better one in the city of Chicago's zoning ordinance to have a street at Ashland and Grand that intersect two major well-served streets, and then a strip of commercial land use coming in. And I believe that's important because there is new development coming around the area. And so for that reason, if it's allowable, I would like to ask a question within the 4-block radius where 16 vacant retail properties were reviewed, how many occupied retail storefronts were observed?
Is that question directed towards Terry O'Brien?
Yes, I would, if Terrence O'Brien has it, yes, Mr. O'Brien.
And you wanted to know how many are occupied?
Yeah, what's the rate of occupied retail compared to the vacant retail?
I don't know exactly. I don't have any figures for that.
Okay.
I counted the vacant stores. I'd like to make the observation, if I can, though. You're talking about how wonderful the corners of Grand and Ashland are. Both the northeast and southeast corner are vacant. The retail stores there are vacant. They're boarded. One is boarded up, and the other on the southeast corner is boarded up. There was some notation in the group from the group in the neighborhood, something to the effect that it was going to be a sports bar, a restaurant, and donut shop. Well, there's no construction going on there at that corner of the southeast corner of Ashland and Grand. The northeast corner is also a vacant retail large store.
I appreciate that observation. It is under development there. There's I can't speak to the specific construction at this point in time, but from a planning standpoint, my whole point here is that looking forward, this is exactly the type of area you would want retail at. I would only submit to the board that if there is no actual retail rate here of what the vacancy is by percentage of vacant properties, I would only suggest that this was an assessment that was seeking vacant units and not comparing them to the occupancy rate. My next question on the vacant retail, were the property owners of those vacant retail storefronts marketing the units at a fair market rate or a higher than market rate? What was the rate of rent compared to what you might expect a reasonable rate of return at those properties?
And the ones that I was aware of, they seem to be within line with market conditions.
Okay.
Their rates weren't substantially higher or below market rate.
Were those property owners maintaining any property tax benefits or other tax benefits for maintaining vacant storefronts?
I don't know, sir.
Okay. I would only submit to the board that in the case of vacant retail, this is an up and coming area. There's a lot of people in the area who are looking forward to seeing more retail coming into the area. It is happening. I know the board doesn't establish precedent, but we even saw a case in our own ward, 1716 West Grand, where someone's agreeing to put retail in. They're putting retail in further west on Grand. And so I think for planning for future purposes, I would only like to establish that I think there should be some scrutiny placed on the record of vacant retail. I will stop that line of questioning. I only have one other series of questionings for Anthony about the, I would like to establish a line of questioning about hardship real quick, because it is my understanding that for a variation, there must be some demonstrable hardship. So if that would be.
Okay, yeah, Nick, really quick, just so the board has a broad view on your objection. Are you equally opposed to the special use and the variations?
I think what I want to look at the application as a whole. So I guess I would say the special use is very, very concerning because this is a retail area. So I would say the special use first. I would put primacy over that, and I think that would be the direction of our community group that has advocated to us as well. The only thing I really want to emphasize, I guess, on variations, the hardship question is I would just like to object to the zoning lot being viewed as substandard, because we know in the city of Chicago, you don't look at 3 parcels put together and call that a zoning lot. A zoning lot is a contiguous area that you can build on. So I would
Objection, Your Honor, that definition is actually not in the code. The zoning lot's determined by the applicant at the time of submitting a permit application, and it's based on the survey provided. And that I'm fairly confident the department would agree with that definition.
So you're developing 3 parcels?
We're developing one zoning lot that is comprised of 3 parcels. The depths of all 3 parcels is 100 feet. It's consistent throughout.
Okay. What is the width of all 3 lots?
I'm going to sustain that objection, but you can keep going with your point.
Okay, I yield that. So I think that the one thing that I want to establish with Anthony about the hardship is I know we can't put anything in the record from the previous ZBA, but I do know that this has been a development that has been under development for numerous years. So I would be curious to know, since the previous ZBA hearing, has the applicant purchased the property?
Yes.
Okay, the applicant has purchased the property. I think that it's important to look at a hardship here, that if a denial of a zoning board of appeals case, if there was an actual hardship, an actual economic hardship.
Objection, Your Honor. You indicated early in the testimony that reference to the old case would not be made. And the line of questioning right now is talking about a hardship that was denied 2 years ago.
Okay, I would like to.
So objections sustained. Nick Z, you can make your point, but we just aren't going to be referencing the old case at all. I wasn't here. Most of the board wasn't here.
I was here, and I want to speak about that when I get a chance.
I think it's a point of fact, though. So I guess all I would like to stipulate here, it's just curious that if a variance is the means to relieving an economic hardship, it's curious that someone would go from a real estate contract to actually purchasing the property. They own the property as of right now. I think there's a mortgage on the property via public record, but this is a property that is now owned. And so I would only stipulate that if there is a variance that needs to provide economic relief, it's curious that someone would then purchase the property rather than walking away from it. That's all I would stipulate there.
Nick, can I speak to that briefly?
Of course.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony, and just identify yourself.
This is Anthony Lamont again. Well, on advice of our counsel, based on the first hearing, which we were discussing, that was under administrative review, and that based on the fact that he thought that the law would ultimately rule in our favor, that we thought we'd get a positive result from the administrative appeal based on law and not on opinions of the.
Okay, we're gonna go past this line of discussion. We're not going into any case. So, and same to you, Nick Z. I'm finding a little bit of relevance, but I'm grasping for it. So, if we can stick fully to our standards, this being a fully new case, do you have anything else? And I want to note for you too that you previously said you wanted to view the matter holistically as one. These are 4 separate matters. We have 1 special use and 3 variations.
Got it. Okay. I think all I will reiterate to the board is that I think this is an area that you really got to scrutinize the view of vacant properties, because there is a lot of forward planning development in the area that's coming online with retail use. And it just, from a planning standpoint, it just does not make a whole lot of sense to have an opening corridor at Grand and Ashland going more and more residential continuously. I certainly don't deny that it's happened in the past, but we have viable zoning here for commercial use that will then lead as a gateway into the other commercial developments that are coming online here. And so, especially given that there is no great statement of the number of occupied commercial spaces in the area, I really would ask that the board really scrutinize the vacancy case and really look at the benefits of fully using C1 zoning to its retail extent here. And I really appreciate your guidance on my questioning. This is something I'm learning as I go, and so thank you so much for your guidance, and I appreciate your favorable consideration of our objection.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and thanks for sticking on with us for later into the night. Any questions from the board for Nick Zettel?
Yeah, I do. So this is Commissioner Toya. So basically, Nick, you're saying Chicago Grand Neighborhood Association, and I heard this a couple years ago. I know the chairman doesn't want to talk about a couple years ago, but I heard the same argument a couple years ago from the prior administration in the first ward. I'm hearing the same thing from the current administration, that you're looking at this part of the first ward as a master plan. And this is also what the Chicago Grand Neighborhood Association is looking for. And that if we do give the special use for non-commercial on the first floor, the master plan that your administration is working with the Chicago Grand Neighborhood might not go through. Is that fair to say?
I I'm going to be really careful here because I want to respect the chairman's wishes on this. And I only would say I am aware that you cannot reference specific types of neighborhood group plans in certain ways. So I am sticking to my analysis of the City of Chicago zoning ordinance. And I have spoken and worked with the Chicago Grand Neighbors on the same thing. So I and I will say, this is, I guess, the only other thing I have to say on that would be hearsay. So I'm not going to say that. I just really think that you can look at the scope. I do understand that the case was made in a certain way in the past. And I do think that even if you get away from that neighborhood plan idea, there's still valid ideas that you can find in the City of Chicago zoning ordinance and its scope.
Just so we know, we shouldn't. So, and Nick, thank you for not bringing that up because, and I'm just going to say for everyone who's listening, this board we don't acknowledge or we're not pushed either direction by a plan that wasn't approved by City Council.
Yes. Yeah. Sam, I do really respect your question because I know. Look, this is tough work sometimes because we really want to see reasonable and responsible development throughout the board. We really want to see excellent businesses. We want to see happy residents, and we got to go to bat for our community sometimes. And they do put together like these extremely well-researched items, and so I know those have been presented in certain ways before, but I am hopeful that you'll be able to find a way that we're representing our community in a way that gets away from the plan problem there.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Nick. Now let's hop back to the applicant. So,
Chairman, do I have an opportunity to respond to
you do.
the objection? If that's okay.
Yep, go right ahead.
I'll try and make it brief and focus in on a few points. The first is we know, and Nick referenced the CGNA memo. When we talk about occupancy and we talk about vacancy rates, that's actually a really good test case for us because that memo specifies or identifies 9 projects that are either purported to be existing or proposed coming online, I think was the term they used. Of the 9 properties that were cited in the memorandum, 6 of them either contain a vacant retail storefront or no building whatsoever. They're vacant land. So when we talk about scrutinizing the information that's being provided, absolutely, there may be projects that have been entitled, maybe even gone through the permit process, but the actual retail unit isn't physically there, or it isn't physically operated or occupied. The other thing is, and a point that we've had, I think, we've gotten to a point with the community organization where our proposed special use is specific to our property. By approving a special use mid-block on our property directly across the street from other multi-unit residential buildings, we're not impeding the other 16 retail vacant storefronts to be occupied. They'll continue, we think, unless they come before the board seeking a special use. The properties on Grand Avenue that were referenced in the memo, if they're ever developed, are other opportunities for retail. Our lot, our specific development, we don't contemplate or we don't see the retail component being viable. That's why we're before the board. But I want to be clear, our application is independent of the other 16 existing retail units that could take on a new retail tenant in theory. And I think that in conclusion on that, we're talking about future purposes and opportunity for future development. Without sounding corny, the time is now. We have a developer who's willing to invest millions of dollars to redevelop this property, to bring new construction now, mid-block to the property. By looking only forward, we're ignoring the existing building conditions and the existing market conditions that impact the property today. And with that, we turn the floor back over if there are any questions about the development, hardship, so forth.
Yeah, so just as a reminder and to get it on the record as well, what was the property previously being used as?
It was it was a community center type use, the Esperanza Community Center. It's a one-story office or administrative building with surface parking. As I stated in the introduction, Esperanza consolidated to another property nearby, and they've since vacated. So currently it's a vacant one-story building.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
Yes. So Nick, the lawyer, Nick, you know, I always ask this, what does the alderman feel? What does the neighborhood association feel? Chairman, we do have a letter in from the Chicago Brand Neighborhood Association. I mean, Nick from the alderman's office insinuated they were against this. I just don't know if we have a letter saying they're against
I believe
the special use.
I believe we do. That
Yeah,
we do?
The memorandum.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So, you know, usually I only can speak for myself. I usually like to hear, and you know this, Nick, I like to hear what the alderman the alderman's office has to say and what the neighborhood association has to say. It seems like they're both on board that they would like to see the commercial part stay, not the special use not granted. So I'm having a hard time wrestling with this. So maybe you could help me out, because like I said, usually when you have the neighborhood association and the alderman's office agreeing, that means it doesn't fit into the character of the neighborhood. And I just, you know, that's usually how I see it.
No, I understand. And I think it's a great question. And unfortunately, it unpacks the master plan that we're really not supposed to refer to. So for the limited purpose of answering your question.
Right. So that's why I went there, because we're not mentioning
I
master
appreciate
plan.
it. No.
Yeah.
Because it gives context and background.
Right. And you know, I've been saying this for 10 years, neighborhood association,
exactly.
alderman. So
in approximately 2014, the CGNA put together this master plan. And I will give CGNA credit. They have been consistent in their application and review of projects that have come before them. The real problem, and where we diverge from both the alderman and CGNA, is that the master plan that they're purporting, or that they're hoping will come true, isn't matching with the realities of the market. Again, the 16 vacancies and what's directly around this particular property. The zoning districts directly across the street, 67 feet away, R5 zoning, it requires ground floor residential. So the master plan, with all due respect to the work that was done by CGNA, it overlooks the existing zoning and the existing building.
Nick, I've got to cut you off just because I didn't let the city or
I understand.
Nick talk in favor of the master plan, so I can't let you talk against the master plan.
Okay.
We're not referencing the master plan any longer.
No. I won't say the word
right.
again.
I just want my question answered about alderman and the association both agreeing. You know what I mean? Usually when I hear that, Chairman, I usually my radar starts going crazy, because it means these are the people that live there. This is just elected official that represents it, and they just don't feel it fits into the character of the neighborhood. So I'm trying to get my head around, why would I think it would fit into the character of the neighborhood? That's all. That's what
I understand. I think that's exactly the way to do it. We look at the alderman and the community group.
Right.
And Chairman, I think I could narrow my answer. Going back to Mr. O'Brien's testimony, the proposed development fits within the existing developments of the surrounding area. The existing all residential buildings that are directly across the street, the existing residential neighborhood that's located directly north of the subject property, and the residential institutional use that's zoned R3 that's maybe 150 feet to the west of the subject property. We have we'll call it we're just on opposite ends with the alderman and the community organization on what that character is. The character of what it could be in the future versus what the character is today. And it's my understanding that the zoning board has to look at the character of what's there today in making its decision as to whether or not we meet the standards for special use.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, if none, let's take this under consideration. I'm going to read the recommendation on the special use, but thank you everyone for, again, sticking around and for giving us a thorough background on this matter.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, the Department of Planning and Development recommends approval to establish residential use below the second floor for a proposed 4-story, 8-dwelling unit building with a detached 8-car garage, provided the development is consistent with the design and layout of the plans and drawings dated November 18th, 2019, prepared by Axios Architects and Consultants. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. We are on to our last matter, visiting back to 16 and 1720Z, which is 4124 South Berkeley Avenue.
Hello. Can you hear us?
Yep, we're here. And Councilor Moore.
Mr. Chairman, hopefully now we have Mr. Levis. He was unable, he could hear us, but he was unable to see us. And now he's just joining us by his cell phone, I believe. So just.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Great. Councilor Moore, go ahead and proceed. If we put your witnesses on the record first and your client, that might be efficient.
We will. Would you like to swear them in? We have here Willie and Connie Brickhouse.
Great.
Hello. Again.
Thank you both for sticking around. I know it's a Friday.
8:30 this morning. They've been on pins and needles.
Being the last applicant on a Friday night is quite the position. So let's swear in Mr. Brickhouse first. Willie, can you state your full name and address for the record?
Willie Brickhouse, 4124 South Berkeley, Chicago.
Thank you, sir. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
I do.
Okay. And Connie, will you state your full name and address as well?
I'm Consuela Brickhouse at 4124 South Berkeley, 60653.
Thank you, Connie. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in these proceedings?
Yes.
Great.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Tom Moore, and I usually like to just tell the story through the witnesses, but I think a little overview is important here. Mr. Brickhouse, as he will testify, bought this house back when it was abandoned. Several of the buildings on the block were abandoned. This building was vacant, and that's more than 25 years ago. And he has put his heart and soul into it. And it's a very small lot. It's 72 by 20. And it now, and he doesn't even know when, but sometime at that landmark. And they now have grandchildren who sometimes stay overnight. And this is a very small house, and they wanted to add an addition in the back. He took, he got bids. And it was, he'll describe it as one of the worst decisions of his life. He took the cheapest bid, and he ended up really being the victim of not only a bad contractor, but who told him he was taking care of permits and everything, and never told him he needed, it was news to him, he needed a variance. But worse than that, he was an incompetent contractor who actually built the building over on the neighbor's property, and when 5 inches onto the neighbor's property, encroaching on it. And when the neighbor realized that, the neighbor called the city, and there was a stop work order, and Mr. Brickhouse was brought into the building court, and we had many hearings in building court. And both the judge, Lisa Marino, who used to be a zoning lawyer, and Prentice from the alderman's office implored the neighbor and Willie to work out something, and to work out a settlement, and to Willie to make this right. So Willie, who and his wife, who were both retired and on fixed income, they had to hire an architect and a lawyer, and the architect, who is on the phone, will testify that he has drawn plans that will totally comply with the code, but they're basically going to have to deconstruct part of the existing rear property. They're going to make it totally compliant. It's going to be 2 feet off of the neighbor's property line. The neighbors and they have a written settlement agreement, and Willie and his wife has made many concessions that have nothing to do with the variances, that were just accommodations to the neighbor, including covering some of their expenses. And we now have, one of our exhibits is a letter of support, or letter of no objection from the neighbor. And the architect will tell you that he has a preliminary approval from Landmarks, and that if we are able to get these variances, it'll be totally compliant with all codes. And also, another exhibit we have given you is more than 20 neighbors on the block have all seen the plans and are supporting this request. So with that, I would call Willie. Willie, you've been sworn to tell the truth, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you bought this property in the early 90s, is that right?
1996.
And at that time, what was the condition of this property and the other properties on the block?
Totally abandoned.
And,
gutted.
okay, and now it's become landmarked, and the block is gentrifying, is that right?
To my surprise.
And so about 2.5 years ago, you and Connie decided that you'd like to put an addition on the back because your grandchildren come after school and stay overnight, and you needed more room, is that right?
Yes, our family's getting bigger, and plus the back had never been repaired, since the time I was here. When I first got the abandoned building, the back brick was just, it was okay. And 20 years later, we decided.
Now there was a garage on the north side of the back that
Yes.
went to the alley. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And your plan was to add the other half of the garage and put a family room above it. Is that right?
That's correct.
And how did you? I don't want to put words in your mouth. How did you go about getting someone to build it for you?
Well, I asked around, and everybody would tell me about people, and I would call people up, and I finally got in touch with a guy who, came and took a look at it, and after the other bids, this was a very personable person, and
Can you speak up so everyone can hear you?
and he had examples of his work, and I looked at it and I just signed on.
And how much money did you give him?
Approximately maybe 20,000. It was supposed to be in the $30,000 range, but I actually gave him about maybe $19,000. That was almost.
Okay.
And the other money was not given because at the point where we were noticed, and I tried to get in touch with him. Well, I got in touch with him, explained to him the situation. Where were the permits? You know, what is this about? I was promised to get back to, and he never got back to me, and you know, so.
And you have since turned him into the city and consumer organizations like Better Business Bureau, is that right?
I seek to redress with the Better Business Bureau, the Chicago Reader, the Urban League.
And you've got no satisfaction, is that right?
Operation Push? Or no, I did not.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Chinta Strasburg from Operation Push offered to put us in touch with Channel 7 investigative team, and that's something that, you know, she kind of
Okay.
said.
But in any case, much to your dismay, well, first of all, why didn't you understand, why didn't you supervise and make sure there was a proper permit?
Because I'm a retired AT&T employee, and I had to take early retirement because of, you know, I also have back issues.
So my question is, you now understand that you should have gotten that you, as the homeowner, should have gotten a permit, and that's one of the reasons you were brought into court, and you now understand, after hiring an architect and a lawyer, that you should have gotten a variance. Why didn't you educate yourself and understand all that earlier?
Primarily, the work went kind of fast, and during this time, you know, I'm disabled, I'm on pain medication, and I was just glad to see the work going forth at the time that it was going.
Who did you understand was getting the permit and taking care of that?
The contractor, Thomas Day.
Why did you think it was his responsibility and not yours?
Because of the pricing.
Okay.
This was a situation where everything, he should take care of everything.
It was all, you understood it was all included.
I understood to be all inclusive, and like I say, he seemed to be like a really nice guy.
Okay. So now you have had to hire these professionals, and you've gotten a denial, and if this board grants these variances, it's your intent to mortgage the house or do whatever you have to do to deconstruct the encroachment and to make the building totally code compliant. Is that right?
Yes, yes it is.
And you and I went through, you have made a written settlement agreement with the McCarty's next door, and you have signed a covenant, and you've made a series of accommodations to them, not only about the variance and moving the property 2 feet, the building 2 feet off the property line, but about other things that they wanted you to do that had nothing to do with these issues. Is that right?
Well, I wanted this to be completely forgiving, you know, because it's like I didn't understand the extent to which.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you speak up?
Yeah, I want to do everything possible to show contrition. You know, it's like I couldn't believe all the can of worms just opened up. I couldn't believe it.
All right.
You know, I already got a wife. I don't need to feel dumber, but I do. You know. And I apologized in person to the neighbors, and you know, I figured the best way to resolve this and show that I'm truly sorry is to get this thing underway, and let's get it resolved as soon as possible.
Okay, but let me ask you directly. You did not understand that it was your responsibility to get a permit until you were brought into court, and the lawyer and the architect and everybody else educated you. Is that right?
Well, no, because, you know, I've never actually had enough money to have anything built. So, I mean, this is something that's kind of foreign to me. You know, I grew up on the West Side, and I'm a lifelong Chicago resident. And, you know, I've never had anything but I don't know about permits.
Okay, and you and I went through a series, an affidavit where we addressed all the criteria necessary for this board to grant these variances. If you were to continue to testify, you testify consistently with that affidavit. Is that right?
Yes.
And similarly, Connie, you and I did the same thing. You went through all the criteria, and if you were to testify, you testify consistently with your affidavit as well. Is that right?
Yes.
And Connie, can you add anything to what your husband said?
No, like he said, you know, we feel really stupid about how we went about it. And right now we're just trying to get everything corrected as soon as possible so that, you know, definitely come in compliance with whatever's required. And like I said, get it done as expeditiously as possible because, I mean, it's like 2 years now.
Okay. Gilbert, are you on the line?
Yes.
Gilbert, you are a licensed architect and you've testified before this board before, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, Tom, let's get him on the record and swear him in. Mr. Gilbert, can you say your full name and address, please?
Gilbert Levis of Gilbert Levis Associates Principal. We maintain offices at 3336 West Lawrence Avenue, Suite 303, Chicago, Illinois 60625.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
I do.
Great, Counselor. You can question the architect. We just ask that you do so efficiently.
So you are licensed and you kind of specialize in landmark issues, is that right?
Yeah, I've done several, yes.
And so you have drawn plans that would, first of all, correct the structural and the encroaching problems, pull that away from the property, and rebuild that part of the addition. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then it would reclad it and make it attractive and make it comply with all codes if it was built to your plans. Is that right?
Correct.
And you've also run these plans by landmarks, and you have a preliminary approval. They still need to come out and do the on-the-spot markup where they look at, they make sure that it can't be seen, that nothing can be seen from across the street. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so when you're done, if the brick houses implement these plans, if the board gives these variances and they implement these plans, this property will be fully code compliant and landmark compliant and will be as if it had been done right from the start. Is that right?
Correct.
And this is a 72 by 20 foot lot. So had it been done from the start, had it been approached properly, it would have been a classic case for a zoning board of appeals hardship. Is that right?
Yes.
Because the small lot like that creates all sorts of difficulties in planning any kind of addition. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you're just following, on the north side, you're following the exact same wall that was already there. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you and I did an affidavit where you addressed all of the criteria necessary for this board to grant these variances requested. If you continue to testify, you testify consistently with it. Is that right?
Yes.
I think that's my case in chief.
Pardon me?
I'm telling the chairman that I think that's our case. We're available for questions.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions from the board? Okay, Counselor, I have one. I just want to get on the record, so you mentioned earlier that this it's possibly a landmark property or it's in a historic district. Will you go into that just so we can have an understanding on if this was what the talks were with the community group on the topic, make sure that this is allowed via the historic district?
Well, actually, it's an orange building.
Okay.
It's not a fully landmark. The district is landmark, but the building itself, it's an orange building. Therefore, the front of the building that cannot be altered, but the remaining is okay. You can alter the rest of the building.
But in order to get a permit, you have to go through landmarks. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
And actually, in our exhibits, we have pictures across the street where there is what they call the Berkeley Cottages, and that is actually landmarked, isn't it?
I'm not aware of that. I don't know.
Well, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, if you look at the zoning map, it shows stripes across it, which I believe show that this is the Berkeley landmark area.
That's correct.
Well, this map shows all the orange buildings, and the ones across the street are called the Berkeley Cottages. And if you look at, this isn't a zoning map, this is a, I don't know what this is. Well, the regular colored zoning map, oh, yes, you can see very vaguely there, see those stripes across on both sides of Berkeley there, and that indicates a landmarking. Also on the block behind as well. When you see the regular zoning colored map, it indicates, those stripes indicate a landmarking, I believe.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, you've done. This was a good overview, and we've got the complete history on what the brick houses have gone through in the past couple of years. So thank you everyone for coming and answering our questions, and more so just giving us a thorough overview. We will take this one into consideration.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time and hanging in there.
Yeah, same to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody, I believe that is our last matter. So I moved that we convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C4 of the Open Meetings Act for the purpose of considering the evidence and testimony presented in open session. For those viewing by live stream, we will return from our closed session and the live stream will continue at that point. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so we are closed. We move to deliberations. or sorry, I skipped a step. We will now vote. Note that any motion to approve a special use will be tied to the recommendations of the department and any additional conditions read by me. We're just going to go down the agenda. I'm going to take it a little bit slower than my predecessor because I'm not in the swing of things as much as he is, but just give me a few months. All right. I move to approve the application for calendar number 32120S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yay.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. The yay has it. The yays have it. This motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32220Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yay.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
The yays have it. And this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32320Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
I vote yes. The yays have it, and this motion passes. And to go back and clarify on 32220Z, I was a yes vote. All right, I move to approve calendar number 32420. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. The yays have it. This motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32520S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito. Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So the yays have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32620S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
I vote yes. The yays have it, and this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32720S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
I vote yes, so the yays have it, and this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32820Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
I vote yes, so the yays have it, and this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 32920S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes. Yes.
And so let me start over on this one. I now move to approve calendar number 32920S with the condition that no non-cannabis customers or other business will be present on the property. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
I'm a yes. The ayes have it, and this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 33020Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 33120Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 33220Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez.
No.
Commissioner Esposito.
No.
Commissioner Toya.
No.
Now, I am a no as well, so the nays have it, and this motion is denied. I now move to approve calendar number 33320Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Are you going to do the two together, or are you going to do them separately? Just, all right. Sorry.
Oh, I'll do these together. Let me confirm, we're allowed to do these together. Lawyers say yes. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
That will save us some time, Sam. Thank you.
Exactly.
I now move to approve calendar numbers 33320Z and 33420Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. The yeas have it, and this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 33920S. Commissioner Toya recuses from this, so Commissioner Esposito seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
I recuse myself.
I'm a yes, so the yeas have it, and this motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 34020S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I'm a yes, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 34120Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 34220Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well. The yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 34520S on two conditions. The first condition being that the hours of operation from Sunday to Thursday will span for the drive-through until 12 a.m. And between Friday and Saturday, the hours of the drive-through will span to 2 a.m. In addition, we're conditioning this approval on that no liquor sales will be made through the drive-through. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 34620S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 34720S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar numbers 34820Z and 34920Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
No.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
No.
And I am a no as well, so the nays have it, and the motion is denied. I now move to approve calendar number 35020S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 35120S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar numbers 35220S and 35320S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar numbers 1620Z and 1720Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so the yeas have it, and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar numbers 27720S, 27820Z, 27920Z, and 28020Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
No.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so the yeas have it and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 28320Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Chairman, that was two together, just FYI. 283, 284.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll start over on this one, guys. Take that off the record. I now move to approve calendar numbers 28320Z and 28420Z. Commissioner Toya seconds.
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, so the yeas have it and the motion passes. I now move to approve calendar number 29020S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so the yeas have it and the motion passes. I now move to approve the written resolution containing findings of fact consistent with the votes of the board for board calendar number 15220S. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
I am a yes as well, so the resolutions are approved. I now move to approve the written resolutions containing findings of fact consistent with the votes of the board for the board's September 18th, 2020 regular meeting, with the exception of board calendar numbers 28520S, 28820S, 28920S, 29220Z, 29320Z, 29420Z, 30620Z, 25220S, and 25320Z. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, so those resolutions are approved. I move that we adjourn the meeting. Commissioner Toya seconds. Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Toya?
Yes, and I just want to say, Chairman, you did a wonderful job for your first chairing meeting.
I'll second that.
There you go.
The congratulations are approved. I'm a yes as well, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for all the time you put in today and all of your patience with me in my first meeting. We'll see you all next month.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you.